This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good afternoon. This is the February 12th meeting of the Public Safety Building Committee. It is 4:10. So we have 20 minutes to get through a few items on the agenda. And we'll start with open time for the public. Seeing none, we'll move right on to reviewing the minutes. Have people had a chance to read those minutes? When we're ready, please, someone make a motion.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second?
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hello, Mark. Okay, so review and act on Zero College Highway appraisal proposal. Now, Ed has provided copies of that. Does everyone have one?
Probably in the filter.
You didn't get all those.
So we're just reviewing the request and the proposal.
The proposal, yes.
Proposal and cost.
Sorry?
And cost.
Yes. Excuse me. Hello, Chief.
So it hasn't,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it hasn't happened yet, just,
No, we have to vote. The committee has to vote to move forward with this. Ed, has the town used Crowley and Associates before?
Yes.
I think you were
And
going to...
I have used them even before Southampton.
I think we were going to try another one as well, where they weren't able to do commercial property, is that right?
Correct, there's another one in Westfield,
Westfield.
O'Connor, which we have used, but they do not do commercial property.
Oh, is that right? Okay, because they're the ones that I'm familiar with, but I didn't know that.
We approached them first.
So you approached the two, and this one could
Yes.
present a proposal.
So if I've got this right, the fee for the first 3 scenarios would be 6,000, and then if it was determined over time to go for the larger assemblage, it would be an additional 2,000, but it could take up to even 9 weeks to do the whole thing. 5 to 6 plus 2 to 3.
Unless it's decided to go ahead right away with the entire parcel, and then it's 5 to 6 weeks with a savings of $1,500.
Being 6,500 rather than...
Right.
But it would not be up to this committee to choose to move forward on the 54-acre parcel. So how does this proceed? Chris, can you describe where it stands with the entire parcel and what the select board is thinking?
Briefly, I guess, we had that joint meeting, and so, let's see, did we come together once after that? We have, I guess.
Yes.
And so we mentioned just, the turnout at the meeting and stuff, and that we were waiting to get the actual appraisal cost to see where we would go. But the select board was favorable to go forward with looking at acquiring the entire parcel, but wanted to know what the price would be, and then what the source of funds would be if we did it. So we hadn't come up with a source of funds at that point, because we thought we might go to community preservation, but that didn't work.
For appraisal fee.
For appraisal fee, to cover the appraisal fee, but they have a sort of an administrative account, but it wouldn't cover this particular kind of activity, or at least that's what the chair told us. So that's where that stands. So at our meeting, which would be maybe tomorrow night, or maybe Thursday night, so depending on the snowstorm, we've booked up a make-up meeting for Thursday if we have to. So we'd probably have to take it up then, and just say, okay, we've identified an appraiser, here's the cost, and here's the funding source. So I think it would be decided on. Ed, what do you think? I think we decided on it. We decided on it this week.
Could be.
At our level.
Absolutely.
I would think so. Everybody was pretty favorable.
So, for the sake of time, since the appraisal cost for the first 3 scenarios is $6,000, and for the entire thing it's $6,500. It's an extra $500 in a timely fashion to have the entire thing appraised. For the sake of time, does it make sense? I'm not offering an opinion, I'm asking the question. Does it make sense? Does it behoove us to immediately go ahead and risk that $500 to have the entire parcel appraised? Now, Ed, let me ask you this to make sure that I understand it correctly. You have learned from the Labrie brothers that if we do purchase the entire parcel, we can place the public safety building at wherever we wish to?
I would say anywhere but the commercial property.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't want to do that anyway.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it was actually one of the clarifications or edits that I asked them to add to their letter, which we will take a look at later in this meeting, but it is in there. So yeah, because I asked them specifically, if the town were to acquire all 52 acres, and that $2.6 million doesn't actually include paying for the 4.2, we'll just say donated parcel, would that public safety building facility have to be located on the identified 4.2 parcel? And they said, and it's in the letter, no, that they could be sited anywhere on that 52 acres at that point.
So that's actually what we're spending the $500 on, potentially, right?
It would be.
Yeah.
So, just looking over what we have for funds associated with this, we would have, after the remaining balance for HKT is $111,743 and some change. With the remaining balance and what we've been allocated for funds, we have a surplus of $32,393. So as far as funding goes, extra funds towards something like this.
That's including the state money, right?
That's the state money. So we earmarked $50,000 for fiscal year '23, $17,500 for fiscal year '24, and the remaining ARPA balance is $123,954.
Yeah.
And we've paid out 3 invoices so far.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because we thought originally, right, we had gotten 50 and 35 from the state, from the earmark, and then that got cut from the governor's budget, whatever, so we got only half of the 35. We got the full 50, but only half of the 35, so that reflects your figures.
Yes.
So I think the money's there, and I would recommend we just take it out of the state money.
And go ahead and have the entire parcel appraised within that 5 to 6 week time frame.
It seemed like the wind was blowing pretty strongly in that direction for the joint meeting
Yeah.
the other night.
Yeah, there was no opposition to the idea at Select Board. I think everybody was willing to move forward, whatever the next steps would be, but it was trying to figure out what the cost would be for an appraisal and where we would find the money, so.
To my mind, this seems like a reasonable cost.
Yeah. And the timeframe is not terrible either, so.
No, especially if we go ahead with both of them
And
simultaneously.
just one clarification, the extra cost is $2,000, not $500, because we would not want one appraisal of the entire parcel, because of the fact that we don't know if that scenario is going to pass at town meeting, so therefore we would need 1, 2, and 3 to be available to us.
Well, hang on, if we look at this paragraph down here, it's talking about one appraisal of a mixed zone and do not engage.
Right, it would give you one appraisal for the 52 acres, would not give you an appraisal for the 4.2 or the 1 acre front commercial lot.
Oh.
Therefore, you do not have the values for those for a town, because each of the 3 should be presented as separate votes.
Got it. So indeed, you're correcting me and saying that we will be voting to expend $8,000.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, but it's still going to be that 5 to 6 week time frame per the paragraph above there, which if you delivery type of appraisal and fee, 6,000, delivery 5 to 6 weeks. But if you decide to order an appraisal of the larger after we have completed the appraisal, it'll be an extra 2,000 plus another turnaround time of 2 or 3 weeks. So can we do the 8,000 within the 5 to 6 weeks? Is that what I'm understanding there?
That's what I understood.
Yeah, that we would tell them that we want to do it all, but we have to break it into 2 parts, right, essentially.
Right, and we have them, I think they were saying the added weeks would be as if they went out there to appraise it, then we asked for
And we're
the-
done, and then come back and do it again. I mean,
Yeah.
my understanding too, is the way I would read that is if they knew that they were gonna go out and do the entire thing, but they were gonna break out our portion first, and then figure that in with the rest. So the 8,000 is probably the right number, that's correct. Sorry.
Okay, so
Reading of it, sorry, yeah.
in the remaining 5 minutes, shall we entertain a motion to?
I move to accept this proposal and engage them to do scenario 1, 2, and 3, plus the whole 54 acres, and spend $8,000 and get the results within 5 to 6 weeks. Is that right?
Is there a second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm thinking and writing at the same time, that's hard for me.
Yeah, no, it was unanimous.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Ed. You may move forward with that.
I'll be right back. No. He is joining at 4:30, which reminds me, before I leave, go downstairs for a few minutes.
So-
I should.
Charlie, we've just voted to have Ed move forward with the appraisal of the entire parcel.
I've seen that. I have all that. I think that I saw it for paperwork was very impressive.
So next, if we can fit this in before 4:30, update on Zero College highway land negotiations. We have here a written statement that Ed and Chris received from Jim and Eugene, outlining
You got it.
in a non-binding way
Recording in progress.
what they're offering to the town. Now, we have not had a chance to look at this, so let's take a moment to do so. And we may have to come back
They're
to
coming
it,
back at the end of the meeting, I have to say.
but we might as well get as far as we can, I think.
No, I know that. Yeah.
So just so I understand, so it's 2.6 million for the 52 acres plus
Because I think that
5,500. So the total is that right? No. It's wrong.
The whole thing was 2.6.
Inclusive of the smaller lot, I mean, of the purchase lot on, okay. I see, okay. Close on 60 days.
So I think a couple main things, we don't have much time, I'll just to note that the, sort of like this third and fourth bullet points, it wouldn't affect the, the donation in terms of moving forward with, the new land that would be potentially subdivided if we were not to acquire the whole property. And then if we did just the part that we've been talking about all along, having that, you know, access road for ourselves, our own driveway area, that wouldn't, even if the rest of the property still was in their possession and they hadn't developed it yet, that wasn't going to stop us from moving forward. So that was one of the things we wanted clarity on, that we weren't going to get held up just because they were held up. And so forth, so.
Now, my feeling is that we have run out of time. We need to invite Janet and Amy to join us, and we've had a chance to read it, but my feeling is we should have a chance, each of us should have a chance to really read it and address it again at our next meeting. That would be my thought. I'd like to read it more carefully. Agreed?
Yes.
All right. So then, if there is time after our meeting with HKT, we will try to accomplish some of the other items on the agenda, but I'm suggesting that we move on, we skip over video update and public engagement and task 7 updates. Agreed? All right. So
Check this. I thought it was set up so they could join anytime, but I may be wrong. I might have to let them in.
I have written. Just go ahead and admit them.
Oh, but they having their engineering firm join too?
yeah, apparently,
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, because there's a Steve Huddle on here.
Hello.
Hello there, Janet. Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well. And you?
Good, good. Getting ready for the snow, I guess.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we're just, Ed's just allowing Amy and
Steve?
Steve to join in. There you are, Amy. Hello, Amy.
How are you?
Well, thank you.
We just gotta close that little box, that's right.
Hopefully no one else is joining.
No, it just did it itself, it went away.
Okay.
You still can close the right column by pushing the X.
Oh,
Yeah, if you do
Wait,
X out, you
you're
don't
right.
have that column on the right.
Come on.
Oh, good.
I wouldn't go that far, so thank you.
All right, I think we're ready.
I think we have maybe one other person from our engineers coming. Steve, is Rob or Bobby coming still?
yeah.
No, Steve.
Yeah, she'll be coming to present on the HVAC options.
Okay. Okay. Steve Huddle is on the electrical team at GGD Engineers, joining us, and then we have Bobby Polly's coming from the HVAC side. So we're going to have them. I can share my screen and we can open up the PowerPoint, but I think we have them.
We gotta get them in here, coming in slowly.
Starting up.
Yeah. Hold on a minute.
We lose that.
Whoops, hold on a minute. This has happened to me before where I get the wrong screen showing.
We're trying to get your other 2 people in from the waiting room, hold on.
Up, David.
Okay, so we've got Bobby, David, Steve, Janet, Amy, and us.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, David.
Hi, David. Is that everyone from GGD who's joining?
We got Bobby Bollies and Steve Huddle.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys want to just quickly introduce yourselves. David.
Sure. David Pereira, principal here at GGD, electrical engineer.
Bobby?
I'm Bobby Bollies, HVAC engineer.
Steve Huddle, project electrical engineer.
Great. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to share my screen again. I'm not sure what. Let's see.
Do you want me to get mine, Amy? No.
Well, I'm going to see if I can get it to. Are you actually seeing the PowerPoint, or are you seeing the?
No, we are not.
No,
we're seeing the introductory Hoodoo's.
Why it's doing that for me? Let's see.
We can switch chairs, Amy, and you can come sit over behind us.
Well, we might. It's funny it's doing that. Let me try again. One more time here.
There we go.
Is it working?
We're seeing it.
Now you got it.
That's so funny because I can't see it at all.
It's probably hidden behind another screen. It's probably there.
If you reduce the faces.
Yeah, reduce it just a little bit.
With the line.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
We can.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go with it.
Go for it, Amy.
All right. So what we have on the agenda today was to start off talking to GGD about systems options and about green design. They're going to do a little presentation, and then hopefully they'll have the information they need at the end of the meeting to go off and write their narratives that we'll then be using for cost estimating. And then after they give their presentation, Janet and I want to show you the continued design progress for the Zero College Highway site. We've done a little bit of work on the plan, and we've got some elevations to show you, and PAR has been working on the site design as well, and then we'll talk about the schedule and next steps. So we've got a lot on the agenda, so we're just going to launch right in, and I'll let GGD take over.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of quickly go over, we're not doing an LCCA at this time, but it kind of helps to talk about the LCCA just to kind of get that.
And Bobby, could you explain what an LCCA is for those who don't know what that is? And then
So it's a life cycle cost analysis. I'll talk more about that, but we basically analyze a couple of different systems against a baseline, and that is usually what we use to determine ultimately what the final system selection is going to be, and we can move on to the next slide. So we're going to kind of talk about the goal of the economic analysis, touch on like what the baseline is, and how we're now being pushed for the the executive order 594 about electrifying buildings, trying to get rid of natural gas where possible. And then we'll go over the 3 options that we recommend for buildings of this type. And then we'll touch briefly on the different incentives that are offered. Next slide. So the goal of the life cycle cost analysis is to assess the performance of various mechanical systems. I think it's LEED, they kind of determine what the baseline is. Generally, it's usually designed to be a cheaper installation cost, but usually a more expensive operating cost. And then that's where we compare our systems against to see which one has the best life cycle cost. And generally, the option with the greatest total life cycle savings is what we would generally recommend, but we can, depends on what your goals are too for the project. This is just typical design criteria, for Southampton, it's based on a 1-degree heating day, cooling 91 degrees dry bulb, 72 wet bulb. This is pretty standard across all projects. For the indoor temperatures, 70 degrees during a heating season, 75 degrees plus or minus 2 degrees for cooling with the relative humidity of about 55%. And then typically, apparatus bays, the storage areas, vestibules, we just provide heat only at 70 degrees. And depending on what the schedule is, you may or may not have an unoccupied setback. If it's going to be occupied 24/7, that last section is not really, it wouldn't be applicable, but it depends. So baseline system, this is kind of new, I think, starting this year. They're no longer offering any mass saves incentives if there's a gas connection at all on the building. Even like your kitchen equipment, if it has a gas connection, they will no longer offer incentives. We'll kind of touch on what those incentives are towards the end. So benefits of an all-electric building, it complies with that executive order. Results in a lower EUI, which is your energy use intensity. It's just a measure of how much energy you're using over the course of an entire year. You have reduced site carbon, CO2 emissions, and then your building's fossil fuel free. You won't have a boiler or gas-fired furnace. And there's multiple high energy efficiency options, which we'll get to in a minute. HVAC system could cost less than fossil fuel, as heat pumps provide heating and cooling through same equipment. So your equipment's kind of doing double duties, heating and cooling, for a lot of these all electric options. And then for cons of all electric, they do usually come with a higher operational cost, and it has some additional first cost required with that. Your generator is going to get larger, and then sometimes we provide backup electric heat, and that will increase your capital costs. So the first option we would recommend is an air source to hydronic heat recovery plant. So this is a single piece of equipment. It provides both your heating and cooling water, and it can do that simultaneously. So especially during like the spring and fall seasons, if you have one space calling for heating, one calling for cooling, this can do that. It can distribute the water as needed. It has typically a high degree of thermal comfort control. Single unit, does both your heating and cooling. And what's nice about this option too is, or all these options really, is that they're paired with the OAS unit, a dedicated outdoor air system. And what's nice about that is you're decoupling your ventilation air from your heating and cooling system. So your ventilation system can just run all day, provide your fresh air, and then your heating and cooling system can run independently and just provide the heating and cooling it needs. And because you're just providing ventilation air, results in smaller ductwork. We're recommending, I think, fan coil units for this option, but you could also go with like induction units. An indoor unit styles provide multiple options to fit within architectural ceiling. Reduce refrigerant piping, because there's really no refrigerant running through the building. It's just all within your chiller, so all your refrigerants outside. You can utilize hot water heating for heating only spaces, which is great. And it's reduced, potential reduced future maintenance and replacement costs. Some cons with this, are, higher overall installed costs versus option 2, which we'll get to. Maintenance of equipment is an occupied area. Quarterly filter changes per unit, on-the-state drain maintenance for terminal units, and maintenance costs associated with added hot water, chilled water pumps, and accessories. Next slide. The option 2 we're recommending is air source variable flow refrigerant heat recovery system with dedicated outdoor air system. Similar to the last one, except we'll have refrigerant running throughout the building, tied to outdoor condensers. Then you have your indoor evaporator units. Some pros of this are low piping installed. You just have these very minimally sized refrigerant piping. Has a moderate overall installed cost. Filler heater plant and distribution systems not required. Single cabinet can be utilized for both heating and cooling. And this is, again, smaller central ventilation ductwork because we're just providing the minimum ventilation air required. Cons are maintenance of equipment in occupied area, more complex automatic temperature controls, higher automatic temperature controls installed costs on a per unit basis due to amount of control devices required. And then you do have refrigerant and condensate drain maintenance. And there will be, refrigerant through the building. We do provide refrigerant leak detection. So if there ever were a refrigerant leak, not that, it doesn't happen often, but if it were to happen, the detector will sense that and shut the unit off and send an alarm to the BMS. And then, the maintenance will just have to go out and we'll have to resolve the leak. Next slide. And then option 3 is similar to option 2 with the exception instead of doing an air-cooled VRF condenser, it would be tied to a geothermal well field. Some pros of this are high energy efficiency and lower EUI. You're further reducing your carbon footprint for environmental considerations, low noise levels inside, longer equipment and piping lifespan, potential utility incentives and federal tax credits. And we'll get to that in a minute, but they're very generous for a geothermal field, and can use geothermal with both water source, heat pumps, and VRF. So, like the rooftop unit, we could provide a water source heat pump heating and cooling section, which would receive the geothermal water directly. And that would further increase the energy efficiency and lower your UI. Of course, that does come with a higher capital investment, requires increased site coordination, higher automatic temperature controls for geothermal plants, and requires increased maintenance. This is just like a typical DOAS system that we would provide for all options 1, 2, and 3. And each unit would be equipped with energy recovery, which basically just transfers heat from the incoming return air and transfers it to the outside air that we're bringing in. Now it's kind of like a preheater or pre-cooler, depending on what season you're in. Next slide. Supplemental heating systems. So for like your apparatus bay, depending on what system ultimately goes with, will kind of determine what we provide. If we're providing like a hydronic-based system, then you can provide a hot water radiant floor system. If we go with an all-electric approach, and for like an air source VRF system, there's no source of hot water, so what we could provide is an electric-based one, but in that sense, it would really just be for like backup, or maybe on like extremely cold days where your system's not able to maintain the space temp, just because, you know, that's going to be, if you were to use an electric-based radiant slab, you know, it's going to be expensive to operate as your primary source, so it would really just be secondary. So some pros, you know, provides redundancy in case the airside system needs to be serviced. If it's a water-based system, it does have, you know, increased energy efficiency, improved thermal comfort, and then improved snow and ice melt for apparatus. For some cons, higher first cost. For an all-electric system, it's a higher operational cost and still requires an airside system. So, like I said at the beginning, we haven't done an LCCA yet at this time. That won't happen until the SD phase. But these are just kind of some averages of different projects that we've done of a similar footprint. So this is kind of like what the LCCA will show for a hybrid system, or if we do like a air source VRF paired with a boiler to provide supplemental heating. You know, it's going to have one install cost. You know, this is really just to show like a comparison between the different options. Like obviously your geothermal at the bottom there, you know, has a much higher install cost than the other options, but it does have, you know, a low EY. So like if your goal is to provide the most green building, then that would be a good option if you can, you know, afford the increased capital. So the LCCA will kind of lay all this out.
And Bobby, just a note, this doesn't include the incentives.
Exactly.
Costs.
Yeah.
The incentives are substantial on the geothermal heat pump system.
Yeah. So, right. These numbers don't include the incentives, so, you know, your actual final cost could be lower depending. Well, yeah, it would be lower if the project qualifies.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sure.
When you say dollars per square foot, are you talking about which scenario? Are you talking about the entire building?
Yes.
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 With the one floor scenario or the two-story scenario?
It would be whatever the square footage of either scenario.
Okay. Per floor.
At this point, yeah.
Yeah, I think right now we're looking at maybe like 26,000 square feet. So you could just, you know, for any one of these numbers, you could just multiply the dollars per square foot by the square footage. And again, these are not for this project specifically, right. So you know, it's going to vary when we do the actual LCCA. This is just more to show what the report's going to look like when we do complete it.
I think what we just want you to understand the systems that we would typically study, and if you have any input as to, you know, we do not want to do VRF, you know, we want to rule systems out that you either have an opinion on or no opinion on, and answer any questions that you may have on these particular systems. But this is just what we would expect, historical data, and we still have to run our life cycle cost analysis for the particular option and building that gets selected.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. For all options, we would typically provide a building management system. You know, it's just you know, like all your major pieces of equipment are tied into this. Provide zone scheduling with your unoccupied and occupied control, like setback operation. Your lighting control system can be integrated into the BMS. It comes with increased energy savings and integrated with preventative maintenance scheduling. And then these are the incentives that we were touching on. So gas heating systems, even if it's just for backup now, they're not offering any incentive. If you have an air source, the hydronic heat pump, it's $800 per ton, and that's based on the heating capacity of the system. For an air source VRF, it goes up to $1,000 per ton based on the heating load, and this is where you can see substantial incentives. Where with your geothermal option, they're offering $4,500 per ton.
That's independent, before you go on, that's independent of the IRS clean energy tax credit. So it would be, let's just say you went air source or geothermal, you get either $1,000 a ton or the $4,500 a ton. And then in addition to that, you would get, actually I think the IRS clean energy tax credit, which is the 30% of the installed system is for the geothermal system. So for geothermal, you get $4,500 a ton, then you get the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act.
So, David, I'm just going to, and the town has, I'm sure has other questions, but could you explain when you're talking about a ton of heating, what does that mean to somebody on a committee? Like, do we have 2 tons of heating? Do we have 2,000 tons of heating? Like, what is a building of this scale run for a ton? I mean, I know you don't know the number for this building, but it's helpful to have some relative idea of what a ton of heating that means.
I think Bobby's doing his calculation right now.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that's helpful. We always know we have this many tons and we don't think about it. But for the town, that's important. And then my other question, David, while Bobby's calculating, is when he was doing all his presentations and he was talking about this is the least costly, or this was, this was a con of it. When you were talking about like a higher overall install, were you comparing it always to what base? Is it the base of a dump system that doesn't do anything or meet any requirements, or is it all compared to what?
The code baseline.
Code baseline, okay. And you don't have a slide that represents the code baseline.
Like rooftops and VAV.
Yeah, okay, that's
an electric boiler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to, yeah.
And cola units.
Okay, that's what I want the town to understand when when you're not comparing 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3 by saying you're comparing it to one base that is very, very simple, doable, possible, but not. So that's my second question. And then my third question, I've got all these questions while you're talking, paying attention, is that most fire stations want to have a radiant floor. And even if you had an all-electric building, would it be considered crazy to provide a boiler that's electric heated so that they could have a hydronic system in the radiant floor? You know what I mean? Because I don't want to give up on a radiant floor without a thought of what that would mean. And I think the fire chief would have to, or the fire department would have to weigh in on that if that is their goal, sort of thing. But we haven't done a fire station without a radiant floor in a long time. So just a question that came up when you were talking about that. So
let's see, do we have the tons, and then we'll go to the radiant?
Yeah, for a building of this size, we're looking at like maybe 80 tons.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted you to have a scale of, this isn't 2 tons, it's not 2,000 tons, it's 80 tons. So, if that's helpful to understand, I don't know if that's helpful for you, but it means
that translates to
$360,000 of savings. And when you were looking at $1 per per square foot. In a 26,000 square foot building, that's 2.6 million, blah, 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 right? And so, you're saving, 360 right there off the top with equipment. That's just equipment, or the base that they would pay for. So wanted to get you a feel for that as well. Okay. And then
the radiant floor, I mean,
yeah.
Bobby, you've done it with either electric boiler, hydronic, or we do have electric radiant, like.
Yeah, it would just be like an electric mat, basically, that's in the concrete.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be about the same, because, for the electric boiler, that's a COP of 1. So, I mean, it's going to be the same. It should be about the same operational costs. Actually, probably a little more for the electric boiler, because then you have a pump too they have to power. But yeah, you could do it both with the electric boiler or the electric mat that would be in the concrete.
Okay.
So all options. You can still provide a radiant floor for all options. If options 1 and 3 would be hydronic based, and that's going to be more efficient.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Folks in town, do you have?
I have two questions. One is regarding the maintenance of the radiant floor. Since it's buried in concrete, how is that maintained when something goes wrong, or it meets its lifespan?
I'm sorry, you're kind of difficult.
So she had questions about maintenance of a radiant floor since it's cast in the concrete or under the concrete. She was wondering, what happens? What do you have to do to maintain it? What if there's a problem? What happens when it's exceeded its life?
That's a good question. Typically, I mean, they're pretty robust systems. Once it's installed, there's really not too much.
No maintenance in the slab.
Yeah.
They're pressure tested if it's hydronic. And if it's electric, if you'd have to cut like a main feed, you have to physically be cutting into the concrete. So once they're installed in the slab, there's no maintenance after that.
But there is a lifespan. I have radiant heat in my workshop, and I was I was told that it's possible that the tubing leaks over time. So just wondering about how that would be dealt with on the big floor.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. It'd be difficult to find the leak.
Yeah, I mean, typically the radiant floors are done in sections. They're not one loop starting at the beginning and running to the end.
Right.
You can correct me, Bobby or David, but they're done
so
in
you can
sections.
You can narrow it down to a zone.
Yeah.
So you'd know which zone is losing water, and then you probably have to saw cut the slab to get in there and do an upgrade.
And do a repair. Yeah.
But they're made of. It's all plastic right now.
Yeah, right. It is. Which only has a given lifespan. And I know it's supposed to be extended, but all right. So that's a fairly major undertaking if it has to be repaired. The other question I have is, when you give us cost estimates, will you be factoring in the incentives so that we know what the actual costs of geothermal versus what are the other systems?
So what we'll do is we'll perform the LCCA without the incentives, right? So you have you'll have a report that gives you apples to apples, and then we'll also include another summary of the including the incentives, so that you can see the bottom line, because incentives sometimes are, these seem to be pretty rock solid and they're there right now, but you can't always count on them, and you still have to come up with that capital cost. Your project has to be able to afford, the $100 a square foot for the HVAC system until you get the incentives back.
Yeah, it's always a return, not a pre thing. And programs change, and sometimes they get better, sometimes they go away, sometimes they just change. So and that's true with, I think, any credit program. So, but a great question. Okay. So do you have another question, or is that the only two you had?
I've got one, if I could add. Could you go back a couple slides where you were comparing all four, right there. So on the second option, that's got a lower, or the lowest installed cost, but why would it then have a higher, what factors into the higher annual operating cost compared to number 1 and number 3, for example? Why is that operating cost higher at 95 cents?
So, just one thing to note, we compile this based on averages of several projects. So, it's not going to be, it's not extremely accurate in this sense.
It's not representative of this project, but in general, the VRF system has more components that need to be maintained versus a centralized system.
Okay. And the centralized system is the third one?
Yeah, the air source, hydronic air source heat pump plant is a centralized system, and so is the geothermal. The geothermal has more components to it.
Okay. So it's the very first one that's still using gas and fossil fuels, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. I will say, for the committee's benefit, I've heard from one of our residents pleading with us as we design buildings going forward to make them all electric and get rid of fossil fuels and gas. So that's already a concern of at least one resident that I've gotten a letter from. So.
I mean, the fact that the state is making making the statement that if you use gas, there's no incentives, or it's a state that I don't know.
There's sort of the codes and the incentives are sort of putting you in a position that I don't even know that we would study a dual fuel or a gas-fired system unless it's something that you guys wanted us to study.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to make a whole heck of a lot of sense in this day and age. It's got a higher maintenance cost. It's got higher annual costs. There's not, but whatever. What have you heard? What's the conversation on the street about geothermal? Were you seeing a lot of that in town?
In town?
There's two that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Zero frame of reference.
I've been involved at Amherst. Amherst College had installed a large geothermal system. It's been involved in a couple projects at geothermal. They actually use glycol rather than water for their recirculation. But it takes up a lot of area, and you have to be cognizant of not digging in that area in the future.
Yeah, you would need to, require a geothermal, a test well, a geothermal consultant to design the field. But ultimately, there's pros and cons for the geothermal. The con is really the cost. The pros are, it's generally the most efficient and, longest lasting because all your equipment's inside.
Well, did you say there's a couple in town? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're not fields, they're drilled wells with loops in them. And they're private homes.
Private homes. We've put in quite a few of them, but it's a decision the towns take for various reasons. Some want to shy away from them. They had a bad experience, and other people were like, yeah, sign me up, sort of thing. This is a good idea. I
think it should be studied.
I was just going to ask, what would the exploratory parameters be for something like that? We have to drill some test wells?
If we decided to move forward, you'd have to drill a test well that you could use as a permanent well to get the parameters of the soil so that the geothermal engineer could design the well. And then they would use our heating requirements to do that, to determine how many wells you need to support the building.
And if we are to proceed just with the 4.2 acre donated parcel and possibly the 1 acre commercial parcel and go with the single story building, is there enough is there enough land within that parcel to actually add the geothermal to it, to the stormwater and septic requirements?
I heard almost nothing of that.
I think the question was, do we have, is space a concern to drill wells?
Go to the next one, Amy, the next slide.
So this one. So there's a lot going on the site. This is a drawing that the committee hasn't seen yet, but the civil engineers have started to lay out where, let me get my pointer here. So,
you can put geothermal wells under any, you can put them under roadways, you can put them under grass, you can put them on all different surfaces, not restricted.
Under the parking area.
Yeah, and they have to be about 25 feet apart, give or take. That's like a rule of thumb here.
So there's a lot of area up here in this drive area. If we can go under the parking and all.
And all along the
utilities coming through there, and all along the front in these parking areas, and the back apron. Yep, and in this parking area over here. So there's quite a bit of area.
Yeah, and all the grass that's not touched right now, all of that could have fields. So, I have no idea how many, wells would be required, or the depth of them, and, how far, there's a bunch of information you'd have to figure out beforehand. But anyhow, I agree that
it's definitely a consideration that we need to make sure that there's adequate space, and that's something we would calculate and give a general idea if that's possible before we go ahead and,
Right.
Any idea? I'm sorry. Any idea of the price tag of a test well?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd be similar to the price of a permanent well, which I don't really have that committed to memory. I want to say in the $20,000 range, but that would only be done if the decision was made to go geothermal. Yeah. And you would use your test well as your permanent well.
Right.
Right. It's not a small endeavor.
No, yeah, it's not something you just go check out, do a drill to see if it could work.
Yeah.
Amy, could you go back to the slide with the options again, the last slide we were on, please?
This one?
Yes. So we're looking at the bottom two seem to be the greenest, correct? The hydronic air and the geothermal, the most green options, correct?
Bobby?
I'd probably say the geothermal and the air source VRF, because your EUI is the lowest for those two. But again, this is just based on an average.
So the second and the fourth are the greenest.
They're all high. They're all very high efficient. Green systems, all electric, high efficient systems. So it's just slight variations. I'm sure when they do the calculations, one may be closer to the other, but in general, I'm not sure. I don't know. In general, Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, the geothermal is typically the lowest.
Typically, we'd have the lowest EUI, yeah. So I'm surprised that that number is slightly higher than the air source VRF, but again, this is just averages.
It's averaged out from different projects with slightly different square footages, so
right.
You can skew the numbers slightly, but those bottom three are all electric, high efficiency, very green systems.
And you're looking at installation costs with geothermal, you're looking at almost like $1 million difference in installation costs. Am I correct in that estimate?
Yeah, but you might be seeing $1 million difference in incentives.
Mm-hmm.
What they've done, it's almost like they've tailored the incentives to put that geothermal system cost in line with the hydro. You know, they've kept bumping those incentives up until these studies start to bear out. Oh wow, okay. With the incentives, the geothermal is right in line. Maybe, you know, slight, but we have to do the whole analysis to show you exactly where it stands. But that's what we've been seeing.
And maybe this is a question for Amy and Janet. When you gave us the estimate of cost per square foot, what estimate of these three options, the green options here, would that have included?
I'm trying to think. So
I think the estimated building cost was roughly, I think it was like $900 per square foot, and that was an estimate.
Yeah, so that was just a number that our cost estimator threw out at some point in time for what he was seeing in the market on average. So it would have been, you know, an average of all different buildings with different heating systems and all. So we don't know. The goal is to take the designs that, you know, we're developing with you and narratives from the engineers and pass them on to the cost estimator to get an idea of what this particular building costs. And we're not quite there yet.
No, I understand. Right. I just thought maybe there was, you know, some number in there that was part of that estimate, just so we can. For me personally, I'm always concerned about that initial price tag, and that's the getting past the town vote, and that's where I was kind of going with this conversation. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that every community wrestles with, dealing with the balance between the installed first costs and the annual maintenance and what's the most efficient. I mean, it's all trade-offs.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer, but I mean, that's definitely a concern, what you have to put in front of the residents. Bobby, can you talk about the annual operating costs for the geothermal, because that's a considerably higher number too than the hydronic.
Yeah, you'll have another set of pumps for the geothermal water, the well pumps themselves, the VRF system. I mean, there's just more components, you know, and they're just, you know, like they're all required to operate, so that's really.
Is there another option, Bobby, the geothermal central plant, not Viera?
You could do instead geothermal. You could pair the hydronic option with, where we're saying an air source, a heat pump chiller. You could do instead a groundwater source chiller, and it would operate the same way, except you're rejecting your heat to the geothermal well field instead of to the air.
And that would be a similar annual operating cost, most likely, because you're not factoring in the additional VRF operating cost there, potentially.
Yeah, it would be a little higher because you still have
the pumps, the added
pumps. But yeah.
So somewhat between two of those.
Right now.
Yeah.
Between 3 and 4.
Yeah, between 3 and 4, yeah. Yeah. Like if I would look at this thing right away, I'd say, hey, let's go with that hydronic air source heat pump. You know, I mean, it just looks, you know, install costs, you know, right there, you know, annual operating, the lessest of the two, the annual EUI highest, but, or not the highest, but not considering the gas, and then the annual maintenance lowest. But that's not the reason to make the decision. That's, I mean, that's my point here. You know, you make your decision for other reasons. You know, is there any incentives coming back? Is you know, what does that do? What are the pros and cons of that one in the big picture? You know, so it's more than
But Janet, I think once we make the decision to do the LCCA with these systems.
In joint schematic design, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, in schematic design, you'll see, these numbers will be different and they'll be more meaningful because it's to your building.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I was saying the chart is somewhat deceptive, to really put too much, make your decision based on this chart is not the right thing. I mean, I think I look at the other parts of the presentation and say, what are the pros and cons? What's it like? What's the quality of this? The heat, the cooling, et cetera, et cetera. How much piping is there? How much is there to maintain, and all those other things? There's a lot more to making the decision. And so for the committee, I don't know, keep asking questions. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just trying to say we're putting a lot of emphasis on this one slide, and there's other things that are involved, like the comment about the radiant floor, that concern. Is there other things like that, I guess? Other questions?
Yeah, one question on the operating costs. Obviously, it involves the cost of electricity. I don't want to make the question complicated, but if we had photovoltaics on the ceilings, on the roof, would that drastically alter the operating cost, annual operating cost?
Well, it would. If you're paying for the PV, you're gonna, increase your installed cost. It will bring your operating cost down depending on how much roof area available. So it's this is sort of independent of the PV system. So you can apply the PV system to any of these options, right? So the PV system is sort of a payback in itself. It's a 100 kW PV system is probably $3.50 a watt. So that's $350,000. And then what will that cover of your building? We actually can do that. Once we run the energy model, we can see the usage of the building based on the different systems. And then you can see how much PV you would need to offset that particular system. Or based on your roof space, you could see how much percentage. Generally, you're not going to be able to, cover all of your usage just with the roof. Usually you need a little bit more, like a canopy or something else. But that becomes pretty, costly. So I would look at the PV as, yes, that would reduce your overall operating cost, but it can be applied across the board against any one of those. But that's also a substantial increase in installed cost for that separate system.
Does it matter what kind of building you build? Because I had a resident ask me, are we going to do one of those Butler buildings? Because that's going to be a lot cheaper. And I just wonder if that matters, or if it's kind of insulation that's in the buildings.
I'll let Janet take that one.
Or Amy. I was going to say, but Amy, go right ahead, because
Well, I mean, you want to have as efficient an envelope as you can possibly have on the building. That will lower your operating costs for any of these systems. The better the insulation, the more insulation. And you can do that with either a conventional stick-built building or to some degree for a pre-engineered building like you're talking about. Most of the pre-engineered buildings get clad with insulated metal panels. They're pre-manufactured insulated metal panels. There are some real trade-offs to those buildings. They are, what's the word I'm looking for, Janet? They are, you get what you pay for. Let's put it that way. You get what you pay for with those buildings. Yeah, there are some real limitations for them. They engineer out every inch of steel that they possibly can. So modifying in the future becomes very complicated and very costly because the structure is not there. There's no extra to work with. We've gone into look at renovating those buildings before. And, you know, we had one building, we just actually tore it down and built a new building for them, but they basically didn't have any insulation in the roof, and they were wanting to add insulation, and the structure was analyzed, and they couldn't even afford to add any insulation. The structure wasn't strong enough to support any insulation in the roof. So that's how you get savings with those systems, is that they really engineer everything out of them, and you get what you pay for in the end.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, years and years ago, the engineered buildings were relatively cheap because it was a box on the ground, and there was bag insulation that was squeezed between the purlins, the exterior purlins to support the building, and the inside, and you'd see these undulating bulbous packages of insulation. Well, you can't build a building like that anymore. That is all gone. The building has to meet the Massachusetts Energy Code, period. And so if you have to have, you know, a 6-inch sandwich panel, I have no idea what it is, to build this building and to make it work, then you have to do it. So years ago, they used to come in and try to make a pitch to towns that this is so much more efficient. But then when you'd say, well, how do you meet the energy code? They disappear. They were gone. Yeah. So I do want to point that out to you. You're not getting one of these. They all call the Butler, that was a brand name, that sort of thing. You're not going to see those kind of Butler buildings that were really cheap to build. They're not building them anymore. I was just talking to somebody recently and said a pre-engineered building was coming in more than $600 a square foot, and it was just a box. So just, and that was a while back, so, that was the last number they had seen. So you're not seeing this tremendous savings, and they have limitations, like Amy said, significant, so.
Yeah, and what Janet was saying about them, being a box, for the ones that were cheaper, that is true, and this is a very customized, highly specialized building with lots of little spaces that need to be configured certain ways to get the operations to flow and all. That's hard for these companies to do, to really get these spaces to work with customized layouts. We just finished one up in New Hampshire, and it was a real challenge to work with the manufacturer and get them to do what we needed them to do, because they just don't think that way. They have their kit of parts, they want to put it together a certain way. They don't really care about how the pieces go together functionally. So it is a challenge working with this.
Okay, I thank you for that. I just think when we get to the community meeting part, that could come up as a question, because people
absolutely
maybe remember the old days or something, whatever. So that's why I asked. Thanks.
Yeah, it is a real, it's what people see out there. Wouldn't that be cheaper? And we also see a lot of them where there's the materials are brought. Some of those pre-engineered buildings you do see on the side of the road, the materials brought right to the ground, and they tend to rot away at the bottom because of that. And you'd still have to build a masonry base, even if you did a pre-engineered building. You'd still have to build a masonry base to provide that protection to the ground, to the lower portions of the building that you need when you're sending big trucks out and a lot of vehicles near the building. So I just bring that one up as well. So what else?
I have a question, more of a comment. I've had bad experiences with VRFs. I know they're not all created equal, but there seem to be more complex, and there's, like you said, there's a lot more moving parts, and the hydronic air source heat pump plant is that's able to I guess you wouldn't have it there if it wasn't able to do a hydronic floor for the equipment bay on like the colder days. Is that an issue at all?
For which system type?
On the hydronic air source heat pump plant, I'm wondering how well it maintains, like in the equipment bay for hydronic flooring.
Yeah, all these air source hydronic, they're able to maintain, they can put out 130 degree water on, I think it's on a design day of 0 degrees. It might be a little higher than that. So for most of your heating season, you'll be able to get your design discharge water temp.
So is there supplemental heat when it gets down that low for the rest of the building?
Yes. So we would usually recommend a electric boiler that would just be used on your extremely cold days, where if you're not able to maintain the water temp, then the electric boiler could kick on. It should be pretty rare that would have to happen, but it's always nice to have that just in case.
Right, and with all the electric heating and everything, does that increase the generator size significantly?
It sure does.
Yeah.
So that's a larger generator, so that's another cost as opposed to, it would be a benefit of a backup gas boiler rather
you would
than
have
an electric boiler.
The generator for all of these options would be similar. And any all-electric building, a generator is similar in size.
And what size is that, David? The size of, I always say, is it the size of the...
size of a truck.
Yeah, a school bus,
I would say, not a school bus. I would say for a 26,000 square foot building, let me just do a little...
Calculation. Yeah, they're bigger than, we recommend, what, a 72-hour?
Yeah, it's for public safety, we usually do a 72-hour base tank diesel, and then you're looking at probably something like 18 feet long by 6 feet wide by 10 feet high.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Do you use diesel or propane?
Diesel. Yeah.
Is that green?
What's that?
Is diesel fuel green?
Well, it's on-site fuel source for emergency backup. It's a standby generator and it meets, Tier 2 EPA regulations. So it's really only running, for a half hour a month, and then, if you have an outage. So it is a fossil fuel, but you don't, you're not getting penalized. If you brought natural gas to the site for a generator, they'd not allow your incentives, but you're okay with diesel fuel. I mean, there's no way to produce electricity other than a battery, and a battery would not be, it would be cost prohibitive, and it'd be massive to support that building for any period of, time. Like if you were to do 72-hour backup battery, that would be, like 2 tractor trailers. And then it would cost, it'd be substantial installed cost.
Yeah.
And you'd still need to charge the battery with a PV system. Otherwise, you're just charging it with electricity from the grid that's produced, offsite somewhere else.
Yeah, the diesel is, you fill it up, it use it a little bit, you make sure that it's running, and then it waits for a problem, essentially, right, David?
Yeah, it's certainly not a green part of the building. It's a necessary part of the building.
Right. Yeah.
To get back to the PV concept, if we opt not to do that initially, would the structure of the roof be inherently able to sustain that weight? And if we decide to do that at a future date?
It's actually a code requirement to provide a certain percentage of the roof to support future PV. So from an electrical standpoint, we need to provide the infrastructure and the switchgear size to accommodate that, and also the roof to support that where it makes sense.
Required now. So we'll think about it.
Yeah,
it's going to be on the project no matter what.
That's in the code.
Yeah, new code.
Not the PV itself, but to ensure that it can be added later.
Yeah, good.
I think they call it solar ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the energy code, solar ready requirements. Yep.
Yep. Anybody else? Lots of great questions. David, you have a very limited scope in this phase. I can't quite remember. I have to I'd have to open it up. But Amy, you did a little bit of.
I think that the next steps were for them to put together an estimate of what the annual operating costs would be for whatever is our final option, and then to develop some systems narratives to pass along to the cost estimator for pricing. So I don't know if we don't make decisions at this point because we haven't done the life cycle cost. I don't know what you typically do, David.
I think at this point we'll write narratives for the systems that we're going to study, so that each system gets a cost from the cost estimator. Electrically, it'll vary slightly depending on the HVAC system. Not substantially enough to, for the cost estimator to pick up, but we just want to understand which systems are we okay to proceed, and that can change. We don't have to make that decision tonight, but something for the committee to think about is, okay, we're going to study 3 systems plus a baseline. Which 3 systems, and are these adequate to study? Well, these, or is there some other version of a system? Like we said, you could have a geothermal paired with instead of a VRF, it could just be a geothermal hydronic central plant. Is that something that you'd want to study? So that's really what we're trying to nail down, is which systems we're going to study moving forward and write narratives for.
So just to piggy back on the conversation for you folks is we need to get to town meeting in the spring. And so we are trying to get that cost estimate done in starting at the end of this month. So I know, David, you said we don't have to make a decision, but we do.
I mean, it would help me. I mean, you don't have to make it. If you could make it right now and say, yes, study these.
I know it's a hard one to decide.
The systems we've prepared here, move forward in pricing and with narratives, and then from there we can do the LCCA.
Yeah, because it's not a full bore schematic design at this point for you guys, and
right.
We're trying to get an idea, a rough estimate of the annual cost, so that the committee has something to say, okay, let's go with X, and then we get a narrative, or those narratives, to the estimator, and he'll be working throughout the month of or the couple weeks into March, and so that he has a number that we can present to the committee by the end of March. So it's a very short window. We had a slight delay that we kind of compressed against here for the committee. So they had a thing that they had to work out. So I don't know if that helps or makes the conversation more complicated, but we do have a scheduled slide at the end that we'll talk to you guys about as well. So just thought I'd throw that out there. We just don't have a lot of time to.
I think we're very aware of that, but I think, does the committee agree that we need to have more information before we can make the best choices? I suppose, to my mind, maybe the only choice we could make tonight was to perhaps eliminate or choose to include the fossil fuel and gas option. I mean, without knowing what comparative costs actually are, I don't feel confident in even projecting, sending you in one direction or another. You say you want 3 options to move forward with?
Well, we've studied a code baseline against 3 other options. I mean, we could do 4 options if there's one. These are the options that we recommend for this building type and size.
We get the experts here. Well, one thing I heard them say is that the incentives will pay for the, sort of be a washout for the increased costs of the installation and the maintenance.
Might be.
Might be.
Might be.
Might be.
Is it all kind of politically based? I mean, is there a likelihood that one kind of administration would be more supportive of good things like incentives and another one wouldn't? Sorry, I got to ask that.
I think the IRA, I mean, it's in there for, I think it's like 2038 or something like that. It's for a long time. I could have that wrong, but
IRS.
The mass save incentives, I don't see that changing anytime soon. But yeah, right. So we have to be able to afford the installed cost.
I think I heard you say that it wasn't necessarily worth, given the lack of incentives, that it wasn't necessarily worth studying that first one in great detail in terms of the fossil fuels and the gas options. Is that
right? I mean, can I ask a question? Are you guys a opt-in community yet? Your stretch code or opt-in? Are you an opt-in community?
Is that MVP?
We have a stretch code, and we have a stretch energy code bylaw.
Okay, but maybe not you may not be an opt-in, but you might be an opt-in by the time.
Opt-in?
There's an opt-in specialized code.
As of now, they're not an opt-in code. They're not in the opt-in.
Okay.
There are only like 10 towns in the opt-in, right?
Yeah, right.
12 towns,
very few.
Yeah, very few. And you had to be, you could apply and then you had to be pre-selected and you're not in it. I mean, there are very few, so right now.
So those are the 4 that you recommended for this size building, am I correct? Can I say that?
Those are the systems, right, Bobby, that we typically study and install in this size building and this application.
And you're looking for us to provide you with at least with 3 options.
Which of the 3 buttons?
Yeah, we're essentially saying these are what we would typically recommend for this building. Is there any version or other system that you'd like us to study? Otherwise, we'll move forward with these so that you can see the comparison.
One question, you mentioned something in between the hydronic air source and the geothermal, so let me just call that geothermal light, L-I-T-E. Is there something in between that you have worked with in another community that would be like that would be worth our consideration based on your experience of having installed it and what its costs are showing?
Yeah, Bobby, I don't know if we've done it in a 26,000 square foot building. I was just sort of saying, that there is other options available. I don't know if that makes sense for this building, Bobby. I'll leave that to you.
Well, and that was going to be, the second part was, does that make sense for a certain size building? That was going to be my other part of the question is, does it have to have a minimum square footage to even make that make some sense?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. Sometimes you reach a point of diminishing returns, I guess, where it doesn't necessarily pay off. But, sometimes it's good to study those options anyway, just to show like, hey, we did our due diligence and these are what we studied. And now the LCCA is showing, this isn't a good option, but at least we studied it and now we know that. So, that might be a good one to throw in here too,
But right now, so we're trying to go to town meeting. Does that mean the LCCA is going to be done, or it's just the estimate, right? So are you saying, do we want to get the estimator to estimate multiple options at this point, or you want to pick an option?
I'm trying to think what his scope was. I think he was going to look at some green options. I know that was one of the things the committee had talked about, and something else we should talk about is, do we want to look at PV as an option? I mean, it sounds like geothermal as an option would be good. Yeah. He was doing a couple alternates along with things, but I think that was more alternates like let's do an all brick building, let's do a metal building, I don't know. And so we'd have to figure out exactly what his scope was, but it was, I
don't have it printed out here, Jim.
yeah. So, yeah, I think we limited his scope, in along the way, because of the overall project limitations or whatever. But I'd have to look that to see what we owned with him, and talk to him about that. He tends to do a detailed estimate in, with some alternates, but I think the alternates were pretty simple, so we have to decide what it is we're going to do. I mean, maybe you decide on, we don't want to look at another material option or something like that, and then we do that. So that's why I'm saying, David, and Bobby, we do want to provide the town information where they can make it the right decision, but we also have some limitations.
But I mean, looking just at this chart and the installed costs, I mean, the installed costs of the VRF and the hydronic air are not terribly dissimilar. It's really when you add geothermal into the mix that you're talking about something very different. So, from a cost estimating standpoint, at big picture, the feasibility study phase, looking at either of the VRF or the hydronic would get you in a ballpark for what one of those systems would cost. It's a question of whether you introduce geothermal.
Right, it's essentially all electric option and then all electric with geothermal. Those are essentially the two costs. The others are sort of, from an estimating standpoint, they're in the ballpark.
Right.
Mark Mancino, this is your field of expertise, right? This is, this stuff, correct?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this.
So I would rely on your input way more than mine or Cindy's, right? So can you offer some guidance?
I just think what the chief had mentioned, that the geothermal, we're going to be paying that out of pocket, so that's an extra $1 million to tack on for the town to look at, because your incentive isn't going to come until the building's up and it's been commissioned and all of that, so it's all been paid for. So that's a disadvantage of that. I think the hydronic air source heat pump is probably the least maintenance, and the annual cost is pretty good, and it's not as complex as the VRFs. I know some VRFs, usually when they bid them, they used a lot of times some of the equipment isn't as robust as other equipment, and they'll go with the cheapest one. And I've run into a lot of problems having to recommission buildings because the equipment just wouldn't stand up. And but I know things have changed, so they might be a lot better now. But that still adds the complexity of the energy management system, and who's going to be operating the energy management system. We don't want a system that's that complex with all these bells and whistles, because the fire department and police department have their own things to deal with without having somebody to man the energy management system, because things aren't running properly.
So Mark, are you saying that all of that the hydronic system is, in your opinion, a much more practical way for us to go than the VRF?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a vast experience, but I've had some experience with the VRFs and large buildings and multi-story buildings, and there seemed to be, a lot of the electronics seem to be sensitive, I found, in some manufacturers. And then the energy management system is quite complex as well.
For the VRF?
Well, they're all going to have some kind of computerized management system that you can, maintain your building, you know, temperature and heat and all of that stuff. And, but the VRFs, you know, it's, sometimes they can be a little finicky in my experience.
What you're saying is borne out under annual operating costs and annual maintenance costs. It's higher than the hydronic airs one.
Right.
So essentially what you're saying, they're finicky,
Yeah,
they need
and
more
I
attention.
think a central plant is maybe some cheaper to operate than having individual units all over the place. But, you know, then I think you add ductwork and all of that, because you don't have the ductwork with the VRFs, you know, because you're running the refrigerant right to the area.
So the central plant is which one, Mark?
I think it's the hydronic air source heat pump plant system.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you still have ductwork with all of these options.
Yeah.
Just smaller in some cases.
Yeah, they're all just
I mean,
the code minimum ventilation air.
I would certainly, you know, defer to Mark and his background in that. I think just for, you know, if we can do some comparison though, I think we ought to be able to show the town that we looked at something like geothermal. And whether it's the full-blown geothermal you've got there or this little hybrid in between that we're starting to talk about, I think we at least ought to show them that we've done our due diligence and looked at that, even if we rule it out in the end. So that would be my thought, is to take at least that number 3, the air source heat pump, and something of the geothermal.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a VRF, the second one, and the third one, and do the geothermal with the hydronic air source heat pump plant as well. So you're adding the geothermal on top of number 3.
Yeah, so essentially you got the hydronic air source and then ground source.
Right. And then to put in a VRF just for to have that in there for a comparison.
And Mark, are you comfortable eliminating the fossil fuel and gas option?
I'm old school. I like fire, you know, but things are changing, so I guess I would leave it to these guys to, you know, that's not the way of the future. So, but the old timers like to see the flame.
And Mark Darnold, what do you want to weigh in?
You know, I think we need to keep in mind that we're not deciding the exact system that's going into the final design. We're getting a price range.
Right.
And when it comes time to final design, we can choose option 2 or 3. We're not.
Right. Well, I know, but they want some guidance tonight. I'm just trying to get something to give to them so we can move on.
Right.
Can we, as a committee, shall we, make the recommendation for options 2, 3, and 4 to be pursued?
I move.
I agree.
Yeah.
Is that enough of information for you for tonight to pursue options 2, 3, and 4?
3.5.
Did you guys right? 2, 3.
Yeah, so did you want to add that kind of?
Do you want to morph one of them into a hybrid?
3.5 is what's being suggested. Is that called a hybrid?
It's really just that instead of using an air source, use a ground source. So it's option 3 with geothermal.
Yes. Yeah, option 3 with geothermal.
Yeah. Is that option 2, option 3, option 3 with geothermal?
Sounds good.
Yes.
Okay. The chief seconded it.
Okay. I get it.
May I have a vote, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. So those are the option 2, option 3, option 3 with geothermal.
So no groundwater VRF, option 4.
No.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
I'm not sure of the question.
They're asking if we wanted to include option 4 as well.
No. We're saying hybrid right now.
Does it? Okay, Barry and Mark, you're wondering.
Well, I'm a little flummoxed about the 20,000 plus to do this well, that we're committed to. Just to do the exploration, you're already automatically committed to it.
No. Oh, no. That wouldn't come until much later in the design. You would have to, that's not something we would do right now. That's much, much later.
Right, understood, but
That would just fine tune the final geothermal design.
Right.
That's if you're going geothermal.
right, I understand that. I'm just thinking,
That's what it would cost for the permanent well anyways.
Yeah.
I guess, David, one question that might help answer that is there any time that you've done wells and said, sorry, can't do wells on this site, sort of thing? It's really not, it doesn't get to that. It's, how deep is the well, how many well fields, and things like that.
Yeah, it's just the conductivity of the soil, the characteristics, how much actual energy can we get from the ground, energy transfer can we get from the ground. And then, that might result in a couple more wells, maybe a couple less wells.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's what I want to say. I mean, we just had a project where we had to add a well. Okay.
Yeah, I think the difference is we need to do the test well, in construction documents.
Right.
Not when it's done. So there's some cost that's gonna drive your design.
right.
But that test well is still drilled, it's gonna be used. So the money it's not a wasted, a throwaway well.
Right. It just fine tunes the final design and final cost.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't make that, we wouldn't do a test well until we're full steam ahead, construction documents, we're going geothermal.
Right.
Right. Okay, so again, we're not going to do 4. I think we're hearing that, but 3 is going to take on the characteristics. 2, 3, and then 3A will have instead of air source geothermal. That makes sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
The most important is it makes sense to Bobby and David right now.
Yes.
I think, you guys, is that clear? And do you have any problems with dumping the geothermal, the information you would get from the geothermal core, now that we're including geothermal in the hydronic?
No,
Okay.
I mean, I don't think you could never look, you'd be able to look at that again afterwards if you needed to, but I think for the cost exercise we need right now, I think that's going to put us in a good position to.
Exactly. Great. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Thank you. Okay. All right. I know it's a complicated subject and it's a lot to throw at you, but we need to, get these guys moving so that they can develop more information so you can make, we have more information to share with you. So.
Well, we hope we've been able to do that. I trust we have now.
I feel a little bit more educated now than I was before, so that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yeah, thank you. I think that's the point. Okay, all right. If you have any other specific questions you think of after David and Bobby depart here tonight, just email us them, and then we'll get them over to David and Bobby immediately so that they can, they can answer it if it's something is in your mind or whatever, and then David and Bobby can answer that easier. All right, great.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Okay. Okay. So this is just the slide that you've seen before. We were proceeding with the purple donated site, the 4-acre purple donated site, and then the green site, which we adds another about 1.14 acres that you would acquire and give access to Zero College Highway. And so we passed that information along to PAR, and PAR started developing some hardline drawings based on the site sketches that we had done previously. I don't think there are any big changes here from what we were showing you before. Yeah, we still have the 2 access drives, the one for the fire apparatus, one for the public, the parking for the fire department close to the fire side of the building, public parking up front with access right toward the main entrance, and then all the police parking over here. There would be gates gating off the police parking and the fire parking so that the public couldn't get in those areas if that was something that you felt was And I just want to mention, there's one, like the parking at the fire station side, there's many ways of doing that parking. You know, where it could be on the side of the building, could be in the front. At this point, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but you know, in the end, it may shift. So, whereas the public parking and the police parking are more driven by location and restrictions. And the other quick thing to say about that site is combining the two. We may not need those, and may not. And in the civil, I'm not even sure we would want to do those two separate drives down the main road. So, but we still showed that because we wanted to say if we had to do it, we have the room to do it, sort of thing. So, okay.
Yeah. And we still have this secondary access point out to the road that the developer is going to be building. And the Sally Port is back toward the back of the building. With a little bit shielded from the public there. We have the carport for the police and the shooting range along the property line here, so that would provide a bit of a buffer to the neighbors and shield them from this, the apron and the activities at the Sally Port.
And you can see we already have a rather large generator shown. I anticipated most of our generators are massive for these public safety facilities. They just simply are, and just, we always show it the size of a school bus or whatever. So anyhow, okay.
And then PAR has been working with showing utilities and stormwater detention swales. You can see they've got some utilities coming off Zero College Highway here. They've shown some potential detention swales around the perimeter of the building. They've got a leach field shown here and a reserve area here, subsurface infiltration for roof recharge over here. They've got a grease trap and septic tank located here. So they're starting to work on developing some of these drawings for the site.
Amy, excuse me, I need to interrupt for just a moment. There's another committee that will be meeting here at 6 o'clock. So we have to make a decision about how to pursue this.
Okay, let's skip the plan.
Well, wait a minute. Do you need to talk for a minute?
We have to do it.
Oh, you need to talk. Okay.
Do you want me to go? And it's the.
I will. There's three options. Meeting ceases. We move to another room. And we'll still use the computer, or I will go see if Friends of the Greenway can use another room.
Go with 3.
Ed is going off to see if...
For you to say, Cindy.
Ed is going off to see if the other committee would be willing to meet elsewhere. But so while he's doing that, we will continue on with your presentation. But I may have to interrupt again. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I can talk fast too. Try to get through it. The plan, I won't go into detail on the plan. The plan is pretty much what you saw before. We did make a few tweaks. We took a look at it a little more closely after the last meeting, and there were a few places where we thought we could improve the flow. They're not substantive changes. We can send this out to you so you can take a look at it. But it's things like, we added another door here into the training room, the little things like that we moved around and made sure that it worked well.
These are drive-throughs, right? The bays are drive-through for the fire trucks? Sorry.
Yeah. They are not, they're not drive-through. They've got doors in the front, they've got doors in the back. So usually they have vehicles facing forward going out the doors. So the ones parked back here, would go out this direction. So usually the first responders are heading out the main way, and then vehicles that don't respond as often go out the back, because they sometimes have vehicles parked in between them. So when a piece of apparatus comes back to the site, they really can't drive through without moving that piece of apparatus that's in the middle.
Yeah. We tend not try to say drive through, because it is confusing for people. They think they're like going to loop around and there's something going to be parked there, and that's not the case. So usually not the case, I would say.
Yeah.
So.
So we have two elevation options to show you tonight. We've got some elevations and some little perspectives to show you. The first option we looked at, we wanted to show you what a building would look like with some sloped roofs and with some fiber cement siding. So this scheme we would assume would have an asphalt shingle, or that's probably the most cost effective. It could also be a standing seam metal roof, which is a little more expensive. We've got a masonry base. It could be brick or CMU that carries around the building. At the apparatus base, we have a little dormer to allow a clear story to allow some natural light to get into the apparatus bays. We've made the hose tower into a little bit of a feature here with some glazing around the top of it, some glazing showing what's going on with the stairway going up behind. You'll be able to see that in the hose through there. And then we've got some trim lines that wrap around the building that the windows are sort of hanging from. And this is the main elevation facing out towards Zero College Highway, and then this is the side elevation. Let me just bring it back to the plan. So we're looking at this. Is the main elevation here, and then the second elevation we're looking at is this one, which would be visible from that new access road being built by the developer. So that's this elevation here. And so these are all offices running down the side of the building. There's a conference room up front and then a number of offices. And then as you get to the back, you start to get to the police evidence area and then the Sally Port door back here. So we're continuing the same language with masonry base and some, these are popping out, these little areas here are popping out to break the roof line, create a little different dormer roof line as we go down the elevation. And we've got a couple different views from the two different main corners here. So this, if you were entering that new drive off the new road from the developer into the site, this would be the view that you'd see with the main entrance right here. And then this is looking from the fire department parking area, looking back at the building.
We lost your picture.
Lost your picture.
You lost my picture?
Yeah.
When did you lose it? Just recently or a while back?
5 seconds ago.
Your black,
Okay.
your black and white 3D views were visible, then they did.
So can you see us,
No.
either of us, or nothing?
No.
I wonder if I can.
We're gone.
Because I can see Janet, and Janet, can you see everything?
I can see everything, and I can see the whole board and the committee. So
I think it might be on
your side
your
of it?
end.
You're in a
Yeah.
chat folder somehow.
Yeah. We're trying to work on it.
Let's close the chat folder.
Overlaying.
Okay, there we go. We found
Got it back.
Oh, we're back.
It moved mysteriously. Okay.
Let's go back, Amy. How far back did you?
We're good. No, you're good. Keep going.
Oh, you saw that? Okay.
We saw that,
Okay.
we had this
Okay.
one too.
And
You didn't see this?
you didn't see
Yeah.
these, though?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the perspective as you're entering the site from the developer's road and that new entry point off the developer's road. This is the public entry right here. And so we're sort of standing close to the public parking. And then in this perspective, we'd be standing in the fire department staff parking, looking back at the building. Okay? So that's option A. So again, a pitched roof with asphalt shingles, some sort of masonry base with fiber cement siding and trim, and all of these have operable windows. And then the second elevation we wanted to show you is a flat roof building, and this is an all masonry option. This we are showing, you see some lines in the masonry, and that would be, some rustication, either a trim piece that projects out or projects in, just to give it a little bit more interest going down the facade. So we do that here in the pop-out piece for the main entrance, and then we repeat it in part of the hose tower and in the apparatus bays. And then coming down this elevation, we have these office areas popping out, and we repeat that language again. We repeat it again over here in the Sally Port this, the idea here is that the wall where the doors are located in the apparatus bays is recessed back a little bit, so you'd get a bit of a shadow line from this masonry that's projected out. You can see that better in the perspectives, which I'll show you in a second. And then that would be repeated here in this element as well. So you can see that's projected or recessed back, and then this projects out in front of it. And the same thing over here in this entry piece. And you could see it mostly in that on the right side of where you're pointing, Amy, down below. Right here. At the apparatus, you can see that overhang there. Overhang right there. Yeah. So again, this is a flat roof option, and it's all in masonry, and again, there are operable windows for this. In both cases, there's lots of room for PV. You've got absolutely. Yeah, this is the front of the building faces almost north. So you'd have pitched roofs and that, and then and then obviously the flat roofs are infinite as far as PV if you needed to. So
maintenance for a flat roof would be less than for a series of pitched roofs, would it not? Yes, definitely. A flat roof is less expensive, less structure, less material. Yeah. Yep. And comparison between masonry and the fiber cement siding. We haven't, we were just talking about this the other day. We haven't asked the cost estimator that question in a while, but interestingly enough, when the energy code started changing a few years ago and we had to start adding thermal breaks into our cladding systems, the cost of things like fiber cement siding really skyrocketed, and it brought the cost more in line with masonry than you'd think. We have to put a whole system. There are a couple of different trade manufacturers out there who do it. Nightwall or Smart CI are two of them. But it's a whole framework behind the fiber cement siding, or if you do metal panel siding, you have to do the same thing. You have to somehow carry that weight back to the structure, and it has to be thermally broken. And those systems are not inexpensive. You have to do it in masonry as well, but we've been doing that for a long time. Those are not new systems. The longevity of masonry is considerably greater than the fiber cement siding, I believe. Am I correct about that?
It's the system behind it. Yeah.
But yeah, masonry has a very long lifespan for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And it doesn't require the maintenance that the fiber cement. The fiber cement, if you get it pre-finished from the factory, the finish lasts for quite a while, but at some point you will have to paint it.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of that fiber cement stuff at all.
They have a lot more colors and finishes available in fiber cement than they used to. Originally, they had like 1,000, but now they have, it's so many, They've certainly come up with the time that it wasn't enough. So you want to go back to the other one, Amy, just to,
So the flat roof is shingling also, or no?
Yeah, no, the flat roof is not asphalt.
So it's like the current police station?
It's a membrane.
The flat roof would be a membrane roof, is that correct?
Correct, it would be a membrane roof.
With what else? Is there tar and stone on it, or?
You can do that. Those tend to be very expensive roofs. Most of the municipal clients that we're working with these days opt for something like a TPO or a PVC membrane roof, which is a little more cost effective than going with a mod bit.
Mod bit, nice roofs, but
they're very nice roofs, but they're costly.
You can't get on board with a flat roof in New England, I'm sorry.
First rule I heard when I moved here 40 years
Even with climate change, Barry?
Interesting, years ago we did a study for a client, half the group was convinced it should be flat and the other pitch, and we got a study, and it was about in the end it was all about detailing, which is not difficult, and then the installation, and they found it literally across the board it was about a 50% of buildings with pitch roofs had issues. The same with others, there was no definitive call on that. People think that you can't put a flat roof building in New England, and not the case whatsoever. These buildings are not built like pre-engineered buildings that, that we've seen punched through in a heavy storm and shoveling these roofs. I've done multiple 100-foot clear span buildings, and not deflected, at all in a stick-built frame. So, excuse me, I don't think you should worry about flat roof buildings. They're not flat in the end, really. They're pitched. They are pitched to drains, and they don't actually sit dead flat. So,
Any comments from anyone else? Marks? Either of you, Marks, or Mark, or Chief? Chiefs?
Seen 1,000 architectural buildings, and I all have their pluses and minuses. Biggest one is the cost difference between, I think, the first, the option one with the gable roofs versus the flat roof. Is there a huge cost difference between those two? I think cost always is our number one item. So if option A is to stick built versus option 2 masonry, is it? What's the difference between A and B?
Could you go back to option 1 again, or whatever, option 2, whatever it was?
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah,
that one.
The difference in cost in that and the other one, I know there's sub cost between different phases of those.
And if we just have the gable roof over the entry, would it look weird not to have the gable roof over the offices on the side view? I mean, could you reduce the amount of cost of a gable?
It's a long elevation without any breaks. Amy and I talked about whether you could reduce breaks or add breaks or whatever, and we were trying to be sensitive to the neighbors coming in there, what they were going to see along the road as they drove, how relatable it was. But yeah, you could. I think you're really changing the image of it by doing that. But it's. It was done for multiple reasons, and certainly it's a very long elevation. Like Amy kept saying, "Oh my God, Janet, could you have made the plan any longer?" I mean, sort of thing. But the reality is, we had other things to deal with. I think it adds a lot of interest to that side. Whereas the north elevation already has things built in, the scale difference between the apparatus, the tower, the front. It has a lot of interest. When you go on the side, you lack that. So,
I guess my question was between the gabled roofs and the flat roof. Is there a huge difference in the two different structures? I mean,
structured
or cost, I should say.
Cost,
yeah.
Flat roof versus gabled. Versus pitched roof.
Do you have any general cost comparisons on the two options?
I don't think we could nail it down other than to say that, we know from experience and from talking to the cost estimator that the flat roof will be less expensive than the pitched roof. But
right.
Okay.
I don't think we could say order of magnitude without doing cost estimating.
Well, one might assume that the cost of any kind of maintenance or the risk of problems is maybe greater on this model than it is on the flat roof, right? With all your peaks and valleys there?
Well, I think, as Janet said, we've had clients who've said, they have more problems with the pitched roofs in their town, and others who've said they've had more problems with their flat roofs in their town. A lot of it has to do with, that first installation and then how well they're maintained over time. I don't think we can say one way or another whether one would be easier or harder to maintain and that you'd have more or less problems with it.
Yeah, all buildings require care. You have to. We tried to make them as foolproof as we can when we first designed them, but in reality, you have to deal with sealant. You have to deal with trim or painting or roof issues. It's just part of the long cycle of the building. I'm not saying in year 1, I'm saying in year 20. We know shingle roofs have to be replaced eventually. Same with other roofs. So it's not like you don't you build, in this case, we build as strong of a building as we can. Some of it is just, is there an image that you want to present to the town, or not, sort of thing. And if that's not an issue, then that helps to make the decision. So.
One thing that I'm hearing in the town is, we are very sensitive to saying we're looking at the most cost-effective way to do the job. But secondly, is it going to have the small town feel? So in a way, the masonry, the brick hits me as a little more, small town. Both of the structures we're not going to be in any longer are both brick, right? So, flat roofs don't really work for New England in terms of the small town feel, but if they're...
Right.
Yeah.
Would you dare say that the longevity of the flat versus the gabled roof are equal? Or not?
About the covering on the roof, you mean? Like whether it's the asphalt shingles or the membrane roof?
Yes.
They're probably about comparable.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know what we get for warranties, Amy, on flat roofs versus what we asked for. Is it 20 or 30 years? And I don't know.
Depends on how you detail them. They typically have like tiers. If you detail it this way, you'll get a 10-year warranty. If you detail it this way, you get a 20-year warranty. So it just it depends on how how you want to invest your money. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas the asphalt shingle, it tends to be a stated warranty for 20, 30.
Right, and you can buy a quality of shingles that's better, sort of thing. That's for sure. They definitely difference in visuals, for sure.
And asphalt versus metal.
Could you say that again?
I said an asphalt versus metal roof. What's the comparison there? Longevity.
The metal's more expensive, for sure. The warranty, I have to look. I don't know. I know that the finish warranty, I did look at this recently on another job, the finish warranty itself, so the color, the paint, was quite a long warranty, but the material, I don't know. And the warranties are all for really manufacturer's defect warranties. They're,
right.
It's hard to prove them if there's a problem.
Right. Yeah. You got to get a good, you got to get a good installer, Yeah. And it's public bid in either case. So anything could go wrong on either one. And hopefully not. That's making it very, a well-detailed set of drawings with specifications that back it up, the construction documents, which are the two pieces. And then, having good eyes on the roofers when they're doing their work, and keeping them on their toes about what it is that we're looking for. So there's pre-construction conversations with roofers and things like that. So hopefully get a good roof in the end.
That's what the OPM gets paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ed was just saying that's what the OPM gets paid for, right?
Right. Yeah. That's true. Making sure that you have site observation from a clerk of the works is critical, and making sure when the project is done that the manufacturer's representative comes and walks the roof
and does their inspection. Yeah. So that it all is tied together, and you'd have on a building like this, you'd be definitely having a clerk, a full-time clerk on the project, who's there and watching every blessed thing that's going into the building. So we can't tell them how to build the building, but we can certainly tell them what we see. Like, you may want to look at that detail, because we're not going to accept that sort of thing. So
if you use standing seam, I know this is not the final architectural design, but like on the bay doors, if you had standing seam there, you have an issue with snowfall falling. I know you put snow guards up, that's a lot of roof to stop the snow guards.
Yeah. For any buildings, when we have a sloped roof, we work with the snow guard manufacturer to make sure that we have an adequate layout of pads or bars
or pads and bars,
pads and bars, whatever is needed to make sure that doesn't become an issue. And we found a lot of fire departments now are requesting to have some radiant snow melt under the apron, at least for, the first 10 or 20 feet. So they don't have such an issue getting out in a storm event.
And unfortunately, you're facing north, the doors, the main doors. So it's built in north. So, it sort of, just, it is what it is. So, there's no changing that. But
it looks like there's a lot less PV area on this plan than there is on these elevations than there are in the masonry building.
Well, the masonry has flat roof, so the PV is endless.
Right, but there are a lot of gables here to limit the space for PV. It seems, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I mean, there might be, there'll definitely be some equipment on those roofs as well. And I don't know that, it's a big roof. If you just look back at the plan, we're talking about a lot of roof area. I think you probably wouldn't have it in your budget to cover the whole roof with PV anyway. You'd be looking for some, strategic areas to put it. So we're still talking about a lot of area, a lot of roof.
Right. And I think even on the flat roof building, we might bring some light into the center bays if we could through a roof monitor or something like that, which isn't shown. It doesn't show on the rendering, certainly, but that's something that we've been doing recently that is a very positive feature, getting light into the depth of these deep bays. Is very nice, and it requires you to use less electric light, sort of during the daytime. So, anyhow,
Ed, you have any thoughts? You've done enough roofs in town?
What's that?
You've done enough roof repair in town on our municipal buildings. Any thoughts?
Not really.
Could you go back to the image of the masonry building, please?
we always ask towns if they have a roofing product that they use, and a lot of towns try to. They say that's a great idea. Like if you're putting a TPO roof on, because you have a TPO roof on the school and a TPO roof here, whatever, then you want to stick with, if you can, with what you have, so that you can have them serviced by the same group. Sometimes that works, but people, it doesn't matter. They just want the most affordable, and then we'll deal with it later, sort of thing. So.
Just because I don't know, what's a TPO roof?
What's that stand for? Thermoplastic, something. Yeah, I'll look it up.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
It's a type of membrane.
Okay. It's a type of membrane roofing. So you're probably more familiar with like EPDM, which is a rubber roofing membrane, and that it's not quite as long lasting as some of these other products. So we tend to do either a PVC or a TPO.
Thermoplastic polyolefin.
That's fine. I'm sorry.
That's a TPO.
It's too late to ask that question. Sorry.
Yeah. And those are usually white roofs. It's a white membrane. They reflect heat.
White or gray, but they're highly reflective, so it helps with any heat island effect, which is another green feature.
And you can have them spec'd with all kinds of different inches of insulation under them.
What was that?
We just heard from Ed that there could be different depths of insulation on these roofs, right?
Yes. So, typically what we're seeing these days is 6 or 8 inches of insulation on the roof. We do have a new energy code out in Massachusetts, and everyone in the industry is sort of wrestling with that and what that means for these buildings. So,
we have to pass the test. Teddy, and it's been very, very difficult to pass it, apparently. It just came into effect, we haven't had it pass one yet, but our OPMs and our engineers who have had to try to pass it have said it's been a bear, the new energy code. Because before, you leaned heavily on mechanical systems, the HVAC stuff to get you towards that, but eventually you wring out all you can out of them and you have to move on to other things, and that's why the insulation is growing. I don't know, Amy, what would be a typical, I don't even know, we used to use 6 inches of insulation on the outside.
Well, we used to, that was more than was required by code, but, when our clients wanted to have more insulation, 6 inches in the walls was sort of the typical that we were looking at. Now we're looking at doing the 6 inches in the walls, and that's outboard of the studs. And then now we're looking at adding some closed cell spray insulation inside the studs to try to increase the R values or the U values of the wall assemblies. There's only so much you can really do outboard of the studs and still
support the building,
support the masonry or the fiber cement siding or whatever on the exterior, because that weight is getting farther and farther away from the metal studs that need to carry it. So
yeah, we don't put bad insulation in studs, and haven't for more than 20 years, I guess. It's been along forever.
It doesn't meet the code.
Yeah, it doesn't meet the code. Yeah, all kind of issues related to that. So.
With the flat roof, you talk about with the pitched roof, mechanical equipment on top. Mechanical equipment on top of a pitched roof doesn't look so good. With the flat roof with a parapet, you can usually hide that, and also would decrease any possible noise effects from the neighbors by having on a flat roof with a parapet.
Yeah, we didn't show a roof plan here, but I'm going to go back to the floor plans here. So, this is, the depth of this building is substantial. And so when we're showing those pitched roofs, we're really showing them around the perimeter, sort of here and here. So there actually is room to have some flat roof behind and to hide mechanical equipment back there. We were thinking there was also room to have, perhaps a skylight to get some light into the training room and to the fitness room. So I think there are definitely opportunities to hide mechanical equipment even with the pitched roof options.
Right.
If we tried to put a single pitched roof over this building, it would be huge. Yeah.
We actually did an earlier attempt at it, and you wouldn't, it had its limitations.
Well, that didn't even cover the whole thing.
That's true. It didn't even cover
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you get a sense of it. Even go back here. So the pitched roof just over the apparatus bays here is tall. If you look, you start to get a sense of that scale here. It's a lot of space up there.
Yeah, we need about 20 feet clear to the other side of the structure in the apparatus bays. So the pitch of the roof doesn't start, or the framing for that doesn't start to up that. So it gets up pretty quickly. These are 6 to 12 pitches, right, Amy?
Yeah.
On that. And so...
And on this drawing, what is that band again right above the apparatus doors? Is that where you had light coming in?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's a clear story. They're windows, basically.
So that is gone in the other model, is it not?
Yep.
It is gone. So that's what Janet was saying. We have some projects where we've put what are called roof monitors up on the roof where you can get some light in that way. You can do that, or you can do it with skylights. But the roof monitors are nice because they're a little less prone to leakage than skylights.
Think of an old mill building, that had a pitch with a vertical piece of glass. Is a concept that you might have seen locally. That's what it is. But so the glass is vertical, and so the flashing is not an issue. And we've been doing that, and it looks good. The fire departments like it a lot. It gets light in where they want it. So we'd have to, add that in. And so,
but it's not something you really see much from, the ground level looking. up at the building because they're hidden back and behind the parapet. So
Yeah, they're way back there. So, and it really depends on what mechanical system we pick too, which how much you're going to have on the roof. You're going to have something, or you could have on the ground or whatever, but you're going to have something somewhere. You know, it's a pretty deep building that you do your best to figure out a way of screening that at some level. So.
So what are you hoping for from us tonight?
We're hoping for some direction tonight, so let's look at the schedule. It's the last thing here, and we can talk about that. So we're here with these yellow bars. It's a meeting to present the conceptual plan and elevations and the meeting with GGD. And now from there, the next meeting that we have with you is on February 26th, and that's to present the final design that's going to go to the cost estimator. So what we're hoping is to get direction from you tonight on what your preference is so that we can take the design and take it to the next level and tweak it and have that ready to prepare at the next meeting. And then the cost estimate, let's see, so we've got, so we meet with you on the 26th, and then after that, we need a couple of days to prepare all the documents for the cost estimator. We mark them all up with assumptions that he needs to make, what material assemblies are going to be, you know, how the wall is going to be built, how the roof's going to be built, and give him all that information on that, and then interior finishes, things like that. And then we're going to send that off to him March 4th, and he needs a couple of weeks. He's going to get prices back to us, and we're going to present the cost estimate to you on March 25th. And then the other things we've got on here to talk about are community meetings, if you still want to do that, and then presenting at town meeting. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's get through maybe giving you some direction with the plans that you've just presented before we move on to community meetings.
Just a quick question though, with the back in that step prior to the community meeting, going out for the cost estimator. At the end, what will we have to present to town meeting? That one final design in our mind, or both of these will be shown to the public and the cost for each of them?
No, it would be one final design, and the cost associated with that design, and you know, the process that you've gone through to get to that point.
It doesn't prevent you from, you know, you'd have to probably by public law share your, you know, result. They'd see what you looked at, certainly, and you can certainly explain why you made the decisions you made, and then, you know, you go from there. But we only get one cost estimate, or one building.
But why, do you think it's helpful, I'm looking at Chris right now, do you think it's helpful if we showed options to the town? Or would we get, they want us, or maybe the select board wants this committee to come, to hear all the data, hear all the information, use all the experts.
That, though, unfortunately.
What?
We don't have the time for that. I think that's what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah. That's right.
They want us to choose now.
That's what I'm saying, we have to choose. Yeah, we have
That's
to,
kind of
that's what I was saying.
I don't know.
Okay, that's kind of our job here.
I guess so.
That's, thank you, that's what I was trying to say, it's our job to do that.
Go for it.
But I also wonder, I'm speaking to the committee again, should we invite the whole select board to be present for the March 25th meeting in order to feel that there was their input and contribution and, you know, kind of a test as to what kinds of things might come up with the, you know, the full public? We're thinking.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. We've got a normal select board meeting on the 27th anyway. I'm not sure. It may conflict with other meetings that everybody else has got on their.
We could be thinking about
school committee and stuff.
Okay.
Amy and Janet, I have a question for you, and I know you can't give it again, my mind's always on cost. And by looking at study A and B, and you can't give us anything definitive, I recognize that, but which one of those is more cost? Is less cost? Is it elevation B or study B? This is for my knowledge, to vote on this. It's something I need to kind of think about.
Not while I'm thinking.
I guess what I'm asking is there anything substantial between the two of them as far as costs?
The roof. And what Amy was trying to describe, and I know it's hard, is like, you have people say, oh, I built fiber cement in my house. It's just the commercial development with the night wall and the thermal breaks that are required. All those things have brought those two pieces. I mean, we could ask our cost estimator, but I know what he's going to say. They're so close. I have to say, I did a project. And it wasn't in Massachusetts, I have to say, but it was relevant because it's the same thing. Everybody thought the building was going to be a masonry base and metal or something on top because of the site location. And we had a CM working on the project, and he pulled me aside at some point or a call and said, we're seeing masonry is cheaper than building because of all these pieces. Now, that was when the energy code is changing. So I think the point of it is that these two products are coming closer and closer together, that it's hard to see a distinct difference between them and enough to say honestly that, I mean, you could make this building all masonry. This building could be all masonry. It doesn't have to be fiber cement. One of the reasons we showed it as fiber cement was because of the neighborhood that it was going to be sitting in. But it's so hard to tell right now. It's just the energy code is really made what was an easier conversation much more difficult. So.
And when you say the roof has substantial is substantial as far as their costs, just a ballpark, what do you consider substantial? I mean, are we talking 100,000 or are we talking 500,000?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how to answer that.
I don't know how to answer it without having the cost estimator. I mean, there's more structure up there. There just is more structure up there because of the pitches, and that adds more cost to it.
Well, also more wasted space, right? That you can't do so much in the gables.
Right. Yeah. In the fire department, you can make an open frame and a stick built with rather than trusses, and you could use the space to, we done one where we did it where they had all their hose hanging from the wall, and then they had rappelling opportunities for training and things like that. But you're right. There's very little you do up there in those gables. And the same within the administration wing. There's nothing you're going to do above that ceiling at all. There's no use for it. It's a visual thing. I mean, it's nice and it's familiar and it's comfortable in a neighborhood and all those kind of things. And that's probably the real thing that you have to balance. Not the details of whether there's small things running down the road or down the side wall, or particularly it's like, is that an image that is more familiar to the citizens, and could they be supportive of that? I don't know. I think you can make a flat roof building just as nice looking as a pitch roof building. We do it all the time. We don't have a problem with that at all. One other thing to ask is, how does your town feel about modern architecture versus, more traditional? Is that an issue that you're going to hear at all?
Well, this is separated from the historic section.
Historic district.
Yeah, it's not. It is not. I don't think that is much.
Okay.
Is it
we occasionally hear that it's in a historic district. It's on the edge of historic. It's in a grouping of historic buildings, or we are not in a historic district, but we want it to look X or Y and Z. So that's why we show you two very different options here: flat roof, pitch roof, trim lines.
Can we move forward, it being now 6:45? Can we please give them some direction?
I would suggest that we let them leave for the night. I think this might take some deliberation, and that deliberation might hold them up. Right. And then we can reach out to them tomorrow with our decision.
Very good.
Yeah.
Are you agreeable with that? Janet and Amy?
Yep, no, we understand that. Yep. It's a tough decision, sort of thing.
Can I ask one question? Is it fair to assume that the flat roof is going to be more energy efficient, or not necessarily? Because of less wasted space like we were just talking about?
Not really. No, not really. I mean, in the offices, there would be ceilings. It's not like you're heating that volume. In the apparatus bays, if you put a radiant floor in, most of the fire stations want to have the radiant floor, so you're heating the masses rather than the air anyway. So, and the roof and the insulation follows the roof line, and the air barriers follow, if it's a pitch, it's going up. So the insulation on the pitch roof building is at the roof line, not at the ceiling line. There's, that's what I was explaining. There's, roof in it. And if you have a pitch roof building, sometimes you have to a flat roof building, you have to build up a little bit of height to get those parapets to work, to get all those other things to work. So you're not like, and these, these have some pretty tall spaces. Even the administration building with the meeting room, these are not small floor to floor heights or floor to roof heights or something like that.
Okay.
All right.
All my questions.
Are we set to?
Yeah.
All right. We thank you very much, and the chief will be in touch with you tomorrow morning. All right.
Okay. All right.
I'll email you with the committee's decision. Does that work?
Okay. Yep. Okay. That sounds good.
Terrific.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Nice seeing you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
A lot of deliberation, I didn't want to have good point, Christina. So I think we need to deliberate that.
That was the chief's point. Yeah. So, who wants to weigh in, Mark?
I'll deliberate. My was the pitch roof. I thought was a beautiful building.
Right.
But to me, it looked expensive and fancy with a lot of gingerbread. And I think, boy, why do you need all the fancy things? I think it's a beautiful building. And even if the price were the same, I just think it'd be hard to sell that. It looked really, I loved the architecture. I think it was a gorgeous building. But I think it didn't look like it necessarily would be the minimalistic that we need to service a couple of fire trucks and a couple of EMTs and a couple of police vehicles going in and out of. The other one looked like it's a giant community center. This is not a community center. This is a functional municipal building. Now, that's just my gut reaction to the two. I hate to say that because we're building this thing for the future of the town, but it's not a place that people are going to come and congregate to. So I think the aesthetics are not as important, not that they always are important, but not as important in this situation. I think the really highly aesthetic one might be harder to sell to the town.
Yeah. Well,
that's my gut reaction.
Maintenance on that building is going to be significantly more, re-roofing all those gables, and that cement, fiber cement, will definitely need more maintenance.
The cladding on the outside, it could be anything.
Well, it could be anything. It could be masonry.
Could have been brick.
Yes, and it could be, but still, that's a very elaborate looking building.
Yes, that's what, yeah.
I think we can agree it's going to be brick. It's not going to be asphalt, cement.
Fiber cement.
Yeah.
It could be
So
split face, it could be other things.
Yeah. It could be what besides?
Split face concrete,
Yeah.
I'm definitely in favor of the brick as opposed to the fiber stuff. I think it's just throwing good money after bad.
Yep.
I'm here representing the Historical Commission, and I believe the Historical District starts at the cemetery, so it's not that far away. And I have to think of those aesthetics somewhat, not discounting the obvious economic considerations. I think if there were the gable roof, there's still plenty of room up there to do the PV down the road, and all the mechanical stuff that might end up going up there. I'm gonna be in favor of the aesthetically nice one.
Mark Mancino, what do you think?
I like the brick, the flat roof. But I was thinking the opposite of Mark. I think people might like that pitched roof because it's more, yeah, it's town, like people are more comfortable with that kind of look, whereas this is more commercial looking. But I like the flat roof. I think it's, you know, as far as practical and everything else, I think that's...
But we also have to remember that the last building, the last attempt at getting a new facility was voted down, and it was a beautiful building, right?
Right.
And there we have the dilemma of, again, presenting as maybe being more elaborate than it needs to be, more or less, not as pared down as it can be.
Agreed, and if it's an outrageous difference between the two, obviously, I don't know that.
I was trying to get that out of them, but...
Yeah, and we're not going to get a comparison between the two.
I mean, I'm even looking for something, even like, I don't know, is it a 50,000 difference, or is it a 250, or is it $1 million difference?
Yeah, right.
I just wanted something like that, you know, and I couldn't get it out of them.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
What do you want, Christina? What's your opinion?
Well, I'll give it, I have it.
You're kidding me.
How about you, Chief?
I like the pitched roof one, looking, you know. But, I mean, the flat roof would be, I mean, it's fine. I mean, you know, once you're inside, you're not going to see the outside anyway, so.
What is your opinion about the town wanting to pay, supporting visual beauty? We'll say that the gables.
Like you said, they didn't like it the last time.
Do we need to? How much do you and anyone else think we need to factor that in?
I think quite a bit, because, I mean, the last building was going to be, what, 10, 12 million less?
Yeah.
So, I don't remember the size, how big the old the building they didn't approve,
It was
how
about
big that one.
23, I think.
23? Yeah, so.
Was that brick? The design was brick?
It was multi-story, right?
What was it, pitched roof?
It was it was a single story though.
No, it couldn't have been a single story.
It wasn't a single story, no. I think it might
It was built into the hill.
Right, yes.
So, yes, and it, I believe the facade mimicked the present fire station.
Yes.
That was a Taj Mahal.
It was perceived as that.
Well, I think those people are gonna think anything's a Taj Mahal.
Correct.
That's true.
Maybe they're gone.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah.
There's new people.
Yeah.
No, they're not gone. Some of them are still here.
Oh, I know, but there's new people.
I think the brick one looks more commercial and,
Yeah, and the brick one reminded me of Harley Davidson.
Oh, funny, it didn't me at all.
It didn't impress me at all. I certainly the first one was like, whoa, but I'm hearing the points of, you know, if I were just, you know, Joe Schmo on the street who knew nothing about what we've been through and everything else, you know, you could say that first one is fancy and the other one is just basic. So, but that doesn't mean what goes on inside is still not necessary. I mean, size-wise, the interior, what goes on in there is still got to be, you know, enough to cover it, which obviously it is, but I don't know, I'm torn. I didn't find the first one that objectionable, but I think it's really hard when we don't have a vague idea of the real difference in cost. That's why I was trying to say is, do we get a cost estimator for both of them? So how do you make a decision?
I know.
I mean, just
I
on.
know.
There's a stark difference between the two. There's a stark difference between the two.
And is there not a middle, again, I go for the middle thing, it's like, okay, we got this one and we got this one, is there something that's something, I don't know, is that the only design there is in the world?
Right.
Ed, go ahead.
That's just,
Yeah.
A thought. Come to a consensus on what the preference of the committee would be. Whether that happens to be a brick building with a pitched roof, a brick building with a flat roof, or whatever. And then, depending on what we pick out, just ask HKT if the cost estimator can give a ballpark on either what percentage in cost more or what percentage in cost less the other design would be. Then you go forward to town meeting, the question comes up, and here's what we chose because, you know, we wanted to be cost efficient. Then you can show the other model and say, you know, here was one of the other ones we looked at, but it was going to be 15% more or whatever, or vice versa. It's, you know, here's the other one we you know had and thought might work, but it's 15% less.
Are we gonna have to show the town meeting one of those renderings and say that's what we want?
That's all we're gonna get from them. Is
Yeah, I mean,
But you still have these that you can show.
Yeah.
Here's some of the other options
This is
we
being
will
considered.
consider. Yeah, we consider.
But here's the real figures based on one of them. They're gonna nail down, drill down on figures more so on one. Yeah. Mark was gonna do something?
Well, it's just the flat roof is a lot better for the equipment and all that, putting, you know, all the stuff on the roof, on the pitched roof, you know. It'd be much easier for all the equipment and maintaining the equipment going up there.
they said there might be a little flat area way in the middle of the building.
Right.
And then they worry about emergency overflow scuppers where you put those. You know,
Pitched roof or flat roofs kind of,
yeah, you got a flat roof in the middle, you have to have overflow scuppers. There's nowhere to put them. I don't know, it's a tough call.
Yeah, a lot of,
predict what the general population is.
A lot of wasted space with the pitched roof.
I'd love to have studies.
You could put the panels on the back side.
Me too. I think it's
I really love the way it looks.
But I think that there's still a residual, and you keep mentioning, we have to be able to say we did the most cost-effective thing for the function and for the safety. And yeah, there were extras we could think of, but we just went with the cost issue. I also think that aesthetically, we might be able to improve it over time with some nice plantings, with some hardwood trees and some better landscaping and.
I will say the rendering was sort of not very nice. I mean, I've seen a lot of buildings look like that, but they can just do some little, you know, inserts on bricks or something like that, and make it a huge difference in the way the rendering looks.
You talking about the flat roof plan?
Yeah.
Because when I saw the first one, I went, whoa.
Yeah,
That's a nice looking
a
building.
little architectural detail.
Well, the first one reminds me a little bit of East Hampton from the front side, just the front of it. You
Yeah.
know? Of their fire station.
Well, that's definitive.
Oh, no, we haven't heard Christina yet.
We haven't heard you.
Yeah, I heard you, Chrissy.
Well, I am definitely a proponent of a masonry building versus the fiber cement siding for maintenance and for aesthetics, quite frankly. And the flat roof seems a lot more practical to me. I didn't see Harley Davidson in that. I actually saw a more interesting building in that. The other thing I think we have to remember is that this is not a final design. They may not be the architects for this building. And we have to give them some parameters to move forward. And my opinion is that the most important aspect of this building is functionality for your departments. And a basic, I would have even been happy enough with, West Hampton looks completely utilitarian. It doesn't look interesting in any way, but if it functions well, that is what is important. They have a new facility. And so, indeed, maybe we don't have to say option A or option B, but we want a masonry building. If we have to choose one between A and B, I would go with the masonry flat roof myself. Well, I do think that the gabled building just, I'm remembering back to the last one. I think it's going to present some problems for us to get it past. A building that's that, it looks expensive to me.
Yeah, it looks that way. That's what I'm saying. I think it's more attractive, but I can see public opinion saying just that. It looks expensive. And we have nothing to refute it with to say, no, it's really not.
We don't have it either way.
So,
And maybe we can get that refined a little bit between now.
I do too. They're just presenting block elevations.
Yeah. They need some direction for us to get it.
They may not be that far apart, but they may be miles apart, we don't know. But they did say the longevity between the two and the maintenance is about equal. I think I heard her say that.
You mean for the roof?
Yeah, of the roofs, the two comparisons.
Well, it goes back to the spec of what the building committee actually tells the final architect to spec.
Yeah.
Because you get into different types of membrane, different thicknesses of
One
membrane.
membrane's that thick and the other one's
insulation, all those build to the longevity and the energy efficiency. And the same thing with an asphalt shingle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can spec a 25-year system with an asphalt system. You can spec a 50-year system with an asphalt roof. So, yeah, it's kind of, unless you get to the apples and apples piece, you could have one spec down here and one spec up here, and it's really non-comparative.
All right, so may I have a motion to present, let's see. What do I want the motion for? A motion of guidance to HKT that can be sent tomorrow.
Ian looks like he's got more to say.
No, my sentiments echo, Mark's for the most part. I thought the first one was beautiful. I did, but I know that I want to go up there saying that we did it for function and we did it for cost effectiveness. That's what I personally want to be able to say to the people we're answering to.
It's also not smack in the middle of our town in terms of this aesthetic piece.
It's not even on the road.
Well, that's what it's not.
It's not on the road. There's a lot of things we could do, and as you pointed out, it could be a whole different, likely would be a whole different architect eventually, and therefore we could request a
maybe like even just like a different, like even an entryway that comes out a little bit. We're just aesthetic, some little aesthetic, right?
And they still may develop that. They're just looking for
the final architect.
So you need a motion.
Commercial buildings in front of it as well.
That's right.
I don't want to complicate the whole decision, but we're also talking about purchasing the other portion of the site to put in ball fields or housing or something. So in that context, we'll should these be too melted or whatever, you know, we're looking at a concept plan that's not even being developed yet, won't be developed for 10 years and not constructed maybe forever or 20 years, and trying to make this building part of that. And we're going down a rabbit hole here trying to trace things to get everything wound up. You're not going to. So I think we're going to concentrate on what we need to do is present a functional town building that the town can accept and vote on.
And you made a valid point, Christina, when you said this isn't the final design, right?
Yeah. Aesthetically,
yes, right.
Well, I think we could let them know that, you know, I think I'm hearing we're pretty much all in favor of the masonry building.
Flat.
And flat roof and masonry the facade, whatever. But would hope that there could be a little bit of perking up of the design as they go along.
Yes. Some portion of it could, like over the front door, could be gabled, right? It doesn't all have to be flat.
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen it parapet, angled parapets. I think that's what was on the previous. It looks like a gable, it's just a gable parapet. So it could be dressed up a lot.
Yeah.
Model it after what's already down here, you know, some kind of representation of what's on the old fire station.
So
is there a motion?
Tweak it a little bit.
Someone has to make the motion. Can I?
I don't think we're supposed to. From the floor, please.
Make it short and concise.
I will make a motion that we instruct HKT to pursue the flat roof design for development of a cost estimate.
Study B. I think it was B, right?
And maybe, should we put the word masonry in there, or not?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? I'll just toss this out. Should we say perhaps with the addition of...
Excuse me.
I'd like them to consider a few other
aesthetic
features to that building.
Yeah.
Enhanced aesthetics.
With enhanced aesthetics.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that okay, so let's get that. Cindy, read that.
I think I got it here. Instruct HKT to pursue a masonry and flat roof design for the cost estimate and consider a few enhanced aesthetics. Is that okay?
Curb appeal. A little more curb.
All right, so we've had that is our motion. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Good.
I'm feeling it too. I know exactly how you feel.
When we present this to HKT, can I ask that we ask that they present or send us that slideshow so we can review it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And they always do, but it is very good to say, please send it as promptly as possible.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
What was your word before aesthetic, Cindy? What was it?
Enhanced.
Enhanced. Thank you.
All right, so I would like to pass over all other items on the agenda. Should we, is that agreeable?
Read my writing?
Yeah.
I agree.
And should we, given that our next meeting with them is in 2 weeks, should we plan to meet next week to take care of some of the routine business that was not covered tonight?
So we call them.
I think we probably ought to. The 19th, there was a holiday.
Aesthetics.
Oh, is it?
President's Day,
Okay.
Yeah.
school's out.
Do we want to try to, is the consensus that it would be good for us to meet before we meet with HKT again?
We've got stuff to do that's got to be finalized, if there's going to be a brochure or a pamphlet.
Yeah.
So if it can't be on Monday, next Monday, what are other good days for members? Tuesday? No, select board, correct?
Well, not that night, theoretically. Theoretically, at this moment.
Well, how about, is there, our Wednesday at 4:30?
What time is that? What day is that, Chris?
That would
I
be
left my phone in the car.
21st is a Wednesday.
What's the date? Board meeting that's until 7.
Well, yeah, but it's not good to back meetings.
No, I've done it before.
Yeah, but
How about Thursday?
Tuesday might be, well, Tuesday's gonna be a huge, that's our new TA coming in.
Which,
Oh, yeah.
Gonna be,
I can do Tuesday, don't worry about that.
Tuesday, I think we
I mean,
can,
I can do Wednesday.
When is the new TA comes in Tuesday?
Thursday,
Thursday, okay.
22nd.
so let's do the 20th. Is that the Tuesday?
Tuesday's the 20th. We could try it. I think we,
Are you
right now,
good
we
with
don't
that?
have a select board, even if we did,
There's
it would
no
start at
meetings,
6.
doesn't look like there's any meetings as of yet.
Tuesday, even,
Well, we can't do it on a holiday.
Okay.
The building's closed. I don't have a problem with it either. Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 20th at 4:30. And I believe at that time, when I'm writing the agenda, I will, I think we need to discuss the public meeting dates, so we can just toss that right out to the, or maybe we can decide, make some suggestions and email those to HKT for their response.
We got to get on the Norris schedule, yeah.
So I'll plan on that.
Yeah, I think we've got enough, especially with the public engagement stuff, to go through from the video to the brochure to the FAQ to the quizzes to whatever we're doing.
Right. Well, we did skip over quite a few things on the agenda.
But we've made a good start. I sent it to both Chris and Ian, just the results, the results of the quiz. There are 94 responses, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys can distribute it.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
a
but we'll send
little
it out.
draft. I'll just
Sure.
show you
Okay.
what questions we're going to start working on the next one.
So also, if you read Jim Palermo's letter, he proposed that we come up with a name for our
I thought that was good,
campaign.
yeah.
So I have got these. These are just ideas. They're all the same. You want to pass them around? These are just ideas that have come, one from Jim, a couple from me, a couple people I know. These could be different ones. We can't pick something that forces a particular position. We have to be just informative. But we don't have to talk about them now. We can bring, and some of those berries I'm looking at is on scrap paper, so ignore the backside.
I love it. Recycle. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah. So anyhow, you can be thinking about this for the next meeting. Would you hand me the extras, right?
All right. Other business that can't wait?
And I didn't get any more on task 7. Some, you guys were gonna do some, yeah. So if you get that to me beforehand, I will update that table, if you have a chance to do that.
And also, next meeting, Chief, you will bring up the HKT invoice? Or did you do that when I wasn't here?
I already paid it.
I know, we just have to report to
Oh,
the
yes,
committee.
yes. Yes, I have it here.
Okay, so I'll put that on the agenda. May I have a motion? Oh, excuse me, Ed.
Just before you adjourn, just a couple things. One is a reminder, because you had talked about the letter from LaBreeze for
Yes.
your next meeting. One of the things I recommend the committee talk about is the 37,000 square feet is in here for the commercial lot, because that would be the minimum lot size in that commercial district, which has 125-foot front times 300 foot, so we say back set or depth. Committee may want to consider countering and maybe something closer to an acre, which is like 43.5 or what have you, just on that point. And then just a little reminder, if you were asked at the annual town meeting about, did the committee look into full geothermal or what have you, you actually have enough information from tonight's presentation to say, no, we didn't go into depth of that. We might may when we go to final design. However, we do know, just in preliminary costs, that a full geothermal system may be approximately $1 million more in construction costs. So you've got that piece of information.
Going back to your first point, Ed, that commercial lot, about the increasing acreage, I think the idea was to maintain the frontage for 2 frontage lots between there and their frontage road. So if we increase the width, then they wouldn't have enough frontage for the second lot.
I believe they do, because if you go back to that preliminary drawing, both of those right lots are in excess of 37,000 square feet.
Yeah.
In fact, the one on the far right, by my memory, I believe was somewhere around 47, and I believe it was a little bit smaller than the one would be meeting.
Yeah, we're talking about maintaining 2 frontage, legal frontages, minimum frontages in those 2 lots.
I think you would still be there, despite what I just said. Yeah.
Because wasn't there the one that we're thinking of, which isn't carved out yet, there's still another parcel between it, right, and the proposed roadway?
Right, yes, they want to maintain legal frontage.
Right, that one, and then there's 2 on the other side of the roadway.
On the north side of it.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah. But I think just one thing, when we see the slide deck, because I thought she was working on the design of an acre and a quarter. Did I hear that tonight? We need to be careful in terms of that driveway when we look at that design on the slide, because they may be planning more, because we thought, actually,
It was
based on the
1
map.
point something acres.
Before we got the map, I think we were tossing out an acre, but that map, which isn't a final map of anything,
Right.
because nothing's been
They have
actually
subdivided
subdivided.
the Form A.
Right, yeah, it's maybe less than,
That's right.
maybe a little bit less than what HKT is working with, so I just need to clarify that. I mean, we need it big enough.
That is true.
Check on that.
Well, also, they have named prices for the options. And speaking of countering, if the appraisals come in for significantly less than what they've stated in their letter, then we have to figure out how to deal with that too. Is that, I don't know how this works. Do you make a counter proposal based on appraisal? Because they haven't had it appraised that we know of, correct? Otherwise they would have offered that.
Just going by market rate, so I would hold until you see what that appraisal is.
Yeah, well, but that,
But that might be another step of going back and having another negotiation about that.
that was what I was wondering about. Okay, may I have
On the flip side, if it comes in a lot more, you can offer more.
No, but we have to justify it, we do have to justify it to the voters. That's another aspect
How
of
we save
this.
the town money.
Right, exactly.
Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second? Second.
Barry, Cindy, 7:15.
All in favor?
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.